United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Clay County School Board Special Meeting, July 28th, 2020, will come to order. Welcome, citizens of Clay County. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to attend this school board meeting. This meeting is our opportunity as your elected representatives to collaborate openly and make decisions that will decide the future direction of our public schools and the education of our children here in Clay County. If you wish to address the board on an agenda item, there will be an opportunity to speak for 3 minutes. Please fill out a card, which you will find located in the back of the room, indicating the specific item number or topic you wish to speak about, and turn it in promptly. You can turn it in to any of our officers in the room. We have limited allowable seating in this room. For those who are outside due to the limited numbers, if you wish to address the board on an agenda item, there will be an opportunity to speak for 3 minutes. Please fill out a card, which you will find located in the back of the room, indicating the specific item number or topic you wish to speak about, and turn it in promptly. Comments submitted prior to noon today via the comment link on our website will be addressed during the public comments portion of this meeting. Your participation is welcomed and appreciated. The first item is review the 2020-2021 proposed millage, rollback rate calculation, and the 2020-2021 tentative budget, all funds. Before I turn it over to Dr. Legutko, I do have 2 cards on this. Charles Walsh. We had an obstacle course for you to get here, I'm sorry. If you would just state your name and address for the record.
Okay. Charles Walsh, my address is on record.
Right,
I've
thank you.
been up here before.
Yes.
For 2 years, I've served on the insurance committee for the district. I'm looking forward to another year on that. Back in March, we accepted the 5.9% insurance increase that came across, and some of us felt good about it. Others of us were not altogether pleased. But we were making very, very good progress there, and we've increased the number of teachers, staff on the insurance plan. We were seeing our numbers going in a good direction, and right now it's not going to be too easy to figure out exactly where we're going to be in the next few months. But with the budget, there has been no allocation for a 5.9% increase. My position, and I can't speak for the entire CEA or anything like that, but as a member representing the teachers, that is a benefit. The insurance plan is a benefit. That 5.9 in today's day and age, I don't feel you can send out and tell the people they're going to have to pay that. I honest to God believe we're going to have to be covering it, or we will see, based on the phone calls I've been getting from people, we'll see people leave. And, I was even thinking of various things. Oh, the younger teachers got this big raise. They could afford it, Well, we're surviving because we brought in younger people and families. That's what's getting us to that point we need to be at. Now, I'm not going to be around a whole lot longer, but I want to stay in this insurance committee because I want to see us get to the point of being self-insured. And we need to work at this together. We've been doing our part for many, many years. Last year, we really started to get it going. Now, the worst thing we could do right now is take a step back. There's going to be enough going on this coming school year than to throw a 5.9 at the staff, the faculty, everyone else. I mean, anybody who's on this, the administration's going to be dealing with this. So I plead with you, get this off the table quick. get this taken care of fast. I know it's subject to negotiation. Let's not do it. Let's just take it off, get it back, and move on to the other things that need to be taken care of for the safety of our kids coming into the school. We need to be spending time on that. Now, I know this is a money item, you know, and it's not a small one. But if we can keep things going and keep people safe as we can, the insurance question maybe becomes one that's not going to be, you know, driving us crazy in the months to come. So that's all I got to say. Mr. Borowski, honorable school board members, it's good to see y'all and looking forward to this school year one way or the other. Okay?
Thank you, Mr.
There you go.
Walsh. Okay, the next speaker is Vicki Kidwell. I want you to know we are sanitizing in between speakers.
Appreciate that. So I really did not write anything to say today. I'm just feeling overwhelmed, as I know you probably are. It seems like every day there's another concern, crisis, problem, scenario that we have to work out. You know, have to hand it to the teachers, man. They're thinking through it all. They're like, what if this happens? Could we do this? Could we do that? Teachers are problem solvers. But we have some problems that we've got to have your help on. And one of the ones that keeps cropping up is the fact that we are being placed in an essential worker role because, you know, you can't go to a movie theater and sit in there and watch a movie for 2 hours, but yet we're going back to work in a classroom with crowded hallways, and we're going to be in those classrooms for 6.5, 7 hours, you know, with substandard filters where we don't have the money to have new filters on our systems and they can't take it. And we don't have any protection for when we get sick. And that is huge. We can't solve that problem without your help. We're going to get sick. You know, we're going to get sick. And when people get sick, should they have to use up every bit of leave that they have and then not be able to pay their bills? If they get sick for an extended amount of time, what happens to them? Are they in financial ruin? Do they go bankrupt? Are you going to be able to get a teacher to fill that spot? I mean, we're living an experiment. And I think that we need to think about the fact that we have a budget that we've presented, and I don't know that there was any consideration for this wild time that we're in. It looks like a normal budget to me. It just looks like a normal budget to me. I don't see anything in that budget that's going to deal with these huge issues. And I know, I keep bringing it up and I keep hearing, we don't have the money. I know we didn't get money from the state. I know we didn't get money from the government, federal government, to say, we know we're sending you back, here's how you're going to deal with this. But we've got to figure it out. We can't just say, oh, well, you know, you're going to get sick. And, you know, the good Catholic girl comes out in me. We've got to have your help with this. So I beg you to, when you're looking at this budget, to put the teachers' health and well-being in your sights and try to figure out a way to protect us and protect their financial health when they get sick, because it's going to happen. And they deserve to be taken care of. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Legutko.
Okay, could you hear me? Okay,
Yes.
good. Here we are again. We were here, last week? On the 21st, I believe, going through the same information. So as I go through this, I'm going to try to be as brief as I can because we have gone through this information last week in detail. So, but there were a few changes, so I'll point out those changes to you as we go through the presentation. Okay. Again, the first, this slide, what I'd like to bring to your attention, of course, we're in step 11 of this entire trim process. As you know, today we're having the public hearing to approve this, the tentative budget and, of course, the millage rates. Our next step, once this is done, we will then convene again on September 3rd to finalize our budget. So, okay. Okay, the next slide represents the historical view of our millage rates over the last 21 years. One of the things that did change in this slide is the required local effort. It went from, I don't have the last number, but it did change slightly. It wasn't a major change. It's now 3.641. So based on that, the total millage is now 6.889, which will represent 93,298,660 in revenue. Okay, all right. We're going to go through this real quick. Okay, based on this information, obviously the total millage is 6.889. It will generate 93,298,660. Again, this is the required local effort, which is, again, this is the local contribution of revenue that operates the school system. There's state funds and there's local funds. This is the required local effort, 3.641, which will generate about 49,310,556. There's your discretionary of 0.748. That has not changed. It's about $10 million. I'm not going to say the exact numbers. You all can see what it is. Our capital outlay, which is 1.50, it will generate about 20 million. Of course, the additional millage, which was voted in last year, will generate about $13.5 million. That then brings us up to 93,298,660. That millage rate is to be levied is more than the rollback rate, which is 2.44%. The next slide, I'll go into what the rollback rate really is, what that represents. Okay. What does that mean for our local taxpayer in Clay County? Okay, so again, our total millage rate is about 6.889. We'll generate about $93 million. What that means to a local, a home that's about $100,000. This year, you will pay about $688.90. On your tax bill. It's a difference from last year of about $15.80 savings. What that means, though, is that if your property had stayed the same, obviously you would experience a $15.80 savings. However, because the property values has gone up, you can see it went from 12.7 to $13.5 billion. Therefore, your rates will increase. So hence, instead of saving $15.80, it's whatever is assessed based on your value of your property. And that's why we actually had to advertise a rate increase, a tax increase, because it was above the rollback rate.
Dr. Legatko, just to be clear, it's not a rate increase, it's a dollar amount increase.
Dollar
the millage
yes.
rate has not changed. Correct?
Well, the millage rate, it did change from last year. You can see it went from 3.799 to 3.6. It actually
so
went
it was a
down.
reduction, right?
Yes, it went down. But because values went up,
But the point is that the school board is not raising the millage rate.
No,
we
no,
are not increasing
no.
property taxes. Property values have increased, so the reason for advertising a property tax increase is that there will be most likely more money coming out of the homeowner's wallet based on property value, but
That's
not
correct.
based on our tax rate.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
I thank you very much for clarifying that, and Ms. Gilhausen, because on social media, we're being accused of raising people's taxes, and we've tried again to explain it. But if the property value did not go up, their taxes would have decreased $15.80.
Correct.
So.
And again, the millage rate went down,
Right.
but the value went up.
Right.
And if you'll notice, the only thing that changed on this slide is the required local effort. That is standard across the state of Florida. In order to participate in the FEFP program, the local counties have to levy a certain amount of millage in order to generate the revenue to participate in the FEFP program.
Thank
That
you.
it's- Okay? Okay. Okay, what is the rollback rate? Again,
Here we go.
here we go. This is something it is the millage, I'm going to read this
Yeah.
because it's very, it's the millage rate for the new year, which would produce the same level of ad valorem taxes, tax revenue, as was levied in the prior year. Of course, there's adjustments for property values by backing out net construction and certain deletions that go through it's a formula that's used. Again, it's important to say that it was established in 1980. So a tax rate higher than the rollback rate, which is ours, must be advertised with a notice of tax increase for our final budget public hearing. Of course, our total millage rate to be levied exceeded the rollback rate computed pursuant to Section 200.065 Florida statute by 2.44%. So in other words, what would it take in revenue to generate the same amount of tax dollars for last year? So for instance, I'll go back. I have to get this clear. If we wanted to generate the same amount of dollars, which was $89,559,000 instead of the 93, we would have to apply that rollback rate and set it at that percentage in order to generate that amount of dollars. However, again, the required local effort is set by the state, or legislative body, and if we were to do that, we would not be in compliant with meeting the requirements to participate in the FEFP.
Okay.
Any questions as we move forward?
I think you did good.
Okay. Okay. All right. So this slide represents the advertisement that was in the newspaper this past Thursday. It represents the total budget. It includes the millage rates as well, and it tells how we're going to spend our dollars and all the different funding sources that we use in order to operate the school system. Okay. This is the second slide that was in the newspaper, the Clay Today. It represents how we're spending our $1.5 million. This is primarily for construction, maintenance, and those types of expenditures. And again, this year we will generate about $20 million. I want to bring out to your attention that for school districts, the law requires us to only budget 96% of those funds. Typically, we do not generate 100% of the funds, so therefore, the state has required us only to budget 96% of that, which will represent about $19.5 million. But I have to advertise the full amount. And again, these are the different projects that we have planned for the upcoming year. I'm going to go through these really quickly. And again, this is the third advertisement, which represents the notice of proposed tax increase. Tells you what we did last year and what this year's tax levy will be, which is $93,298,660. In order to participate in FEFP and receive $241,224,877 in state funds, we must generate at least, we must levy, I shouldn't say generate, we must levy at least $93,298,660. One of the things, well, never mind, I'll talk about the 96% in a minute. Okay, so now those are the ads, and pretty much the millage rate is what we will adopt today after my presentation. So I'm going to go into how we're spending our dollars. And again, we'll go into the different funding sources. There's general fund, there's federal, there's debt service, and there's capital. So I'll go into that. But I'm going to go through this really fast, okay? Again, this is a pie chart that shows how we're spending, the revenues that we generate. As you can see, in order to get 77% of those funds, we're generating about 20% of that revenue, which represents the $61 million. Okay. Total budget is total revenue is about 313,485 over 71, with both combined revenue sources. Okay. This is our general fund, and it pretty much breaks out how the different types of revenues that we receive on an annual basis. Our local revenue, of course, is our property tax, which is the largest amount. It's about 96, what you're looking at there, the 56 million is 96% of the required local effort. What I do want to point out to you is that in 1920, we generated about 54,594,000 in local taxes. What we budgeted last year was about 96% of that, which was 54,475. We collected just slightly above the 96%. So even though I am presenting a budget of what we believe we will collect, at the end of the fiscal year, we do not necessarily collect the 96%. We're usually less. This year, we happen to be just slightly above the 96%, okay? So the reason I'm saying that, I just wanted you all to know that this is a budget. It is a make-believe of what we believe we will collect in revenue. We do not know what we're going to expect. We do not know what's going to come, especially for this fiscal year. It's a lot of unknowns. What I have presented here was what was given to me by the state through the legislative process, and it's, it was what was decided that was going to be delivered to the different districts. Ours is based on about 39,000 FTEs of students. Therefore, if we have all our 39,000 students come back brick and mortar, we will generate the revenue that we are projecting. If that does not happen, of course, we will have to go back to the table and revisit what our budget would look like. So I just want to point that out. It is a budget. It is not the final numbers. It is make-believe in my mind, at this point. Anyway, so, all right, let's move on to the state revenue. Again, we've got about $243 million sitting in state revenue. You've got $199 million that's in the FEFP. And of course, part of the FEFP, there's categorical funds that are restricted for specific items. So for instance, class size, categorical, other lottery and school recognition. We've got 41 million in there. That number represents just class size. Remember, school recognition went away this year. We did not get any of those dollars. This last session that, actually the governor vetoed those dollars. So we do not get the school recognition or the lottery funds. Okay, let's see. Okay, and our federal revenue, of course, is represented with the military families, the impact aid, and of course ROTC and Medicaid. Total revenue is about $307 million. Part of that revenue, of course, is transferred to different funding sources, such as the capital. We are proposing to transfer about $4.1 million from the general fund to capital. Reverse. We're proposing to transfer from capital to the general to help support those expenditures that are required, such as we've got our liability insurance, which is over $1 million, and of course, the cost of maintenance for those projects that are listed on the LCIF ads, those projects. And of course, last year, with the bus lease, you'll see there's a $10.6 million. That's the cost of the bus lease that we entertained last year. The purchase of those buses. All right. All right. So I'm going to continue on. Okay. Now we're going into the general fund expenditures. Those were just revenues. Okay. The general fund represents about 77% of this total budget. And of course, what do we use those funds for? Well, again, these are the items that we do use it for. We are spending it on our schools for salaries, benefits. We are spending it on instructional services, specific categorical programs that, such as instructional materials. Those dollars are being spent specifically for those items. Let's see. And some capital projects, of course, we have our fund balance that we are required to maintain at least 3% in our contingency fund. But our fund balance also includes restricted funds. There are things in there that I've got to set aside for certain things, such as McKay scholarships. Those are dollars that do come off the top that goes for back to the state for McKay. And that's about $2.5–3 million. So even though our total budget looks at over 300 million, there are things that are deducted from that budget that must that is set aside, and that's sitting in our restricted fund balance. Okay. So as we move along, in order for us to account for all of these things, we are required to account for our revenues, our expenditures, using a defined chart of accounts, which is called, the Red Book. So I'm going to go through the types of accounts that we use, which is, it's first started with functions and then objects. So those things kind of identify how we're spending those dollars. So we're very transparent in the way you can identify that we are spending our dollars based on the statute, on how, if it's for salaries and benefits, it's identified. It's for instructional services, it's identified that these are for teachers. These are for instructional services specifically. So, and we do get audited each year, so by the state. So if we're not following these rules, obviously we do have, we have to pay back, or we pay back dollars, or we get written up. So, okay, all right. So our first one is the function group. Obviously, we are broken down by different types of groups. Of course, you've got the instruction, your instructional support, your general support, your community services, and non-program charges. The majority of our expenses are in the first two categories, which is the instruction, the 5,000s and 6,000. 5,000 represents instructional teachers, teachers' aides, all of those types of expenditures. The instructional support represents coaches, specialists, those types of people that are out support to the instructional services. All right. Okay, here's a summary of how we spent our money the last two years, and of course what we are projecting for this upcoming fiscal year, based on the revenue that we could potentially receive. Unless you have questions, I'm going to go and continue to move on. Okay. Okay. Again, the second category is by objects, which is even more granular, where we speak about how we spend our salaries, benefits, purchase services, of course, our utilities, materials and supplies, capital outlay, and of course, other expenses. Again, the majority of our expenditures appear in the first two categories, which is salaries and benefits. Oh, hold on. Okay, this is a pictorial view of where our revenue expenditures are being spent. As you can see, 79% of our budget represents the salaries and benefits. 11% is purchase services, which are contracts that we have. We have a lot of outsourced type expenditures. So, okay. Again, these are the actual figures, what we spent in the current year, unaudited at this time, and what we're proposing to spend for the upcoming year. I do want to point out that our FRS percentage did go up this year. It went up by 1.5%, which represents about $3 million. So, and that was statutorily set in this year's session. Do we have questions on this chart? Oh, we want to move on. Okay. All right, this is a summary of our statement revenues, expenditures, and what changes occur in our fund balance. As you can see, we are projecting, again, this is all projections. We did end up with a fund balance of this year of about 5%, which represents about $14.7 million. Of course, with given our total revenues of about $307 million, with the fund balance and less the expenditures and appropriations of about $321 million, we'll have about $19 million left over. As you can see, it's less than what we're actually bringing in fund balance. So you take that with our transfers from the other financing areas, we'll have about $25,996,000. Of that, about $15 million represents the unassigned. $10 million is there for restricted type projects. So we're projecting about 5%. So we'll see what happens at the end of this year, next year, or this year. Again, this is a pictorial view of where we were several years ago. And of course, we've tried, and we have done a really promising job of trying to maintain a good fund balance, at least above the 3% that's required by the state, as well as meeting some of the demands that we, at the schools and at the district level to operate. So. Okay, within that, of course, we've got the 1 mil. So what I did was I pulled out the 1 mil. The 1 mil isn't part of the general fund, but it is general fund. Does that make sense? So what I did was, again, I wanted to make sure that we're transparent on how we spent our $1 million. And of course, it was for safety and security. So therefore, as we're looking at it, our beginning fund balance, we had nothing last year. Of course, we did roll about $975,000 remaining. The total revenue we collected was $12,033,643. Now, if you can recall, in last year's budget, we projected to collect about $12.2 million. We didn't collect all 12.2. We only collected about 12 million. So it's less than what we projected. So the numbers that I'm showing is what we've collected as of right now, as of today. It's unaudited, and but it's not the same as what we projected last year, okay? Next year, of course, current year, we're looking at generating about $13 million. That represents 96% of the total amount that we hope to generate. Our expenditures are projected to be at about $10.4 million. We do have some encumbrances from the prior year that we needed to roll. All the bills weren't paid at the end of June 30th. Therefore, we rolled those expenditures or that budget and the encumbrances. So it's about $1.2 million that we're bringing over with a total expenditures of about $11.6 million. Of course, as part of the board's directive, we have that transfer of the $2 million towards insurance. So therefore, we're proposing an ending fund balance of about $291,000. How are we spending our mill money? This is how we're spending it. Again, 5.9 million will be in construction, facilities, hardening of schools, and of course, the 7,900 is our guardian program as well as our school resource officers program. Here's another granular look at how those dollars are being spent. The majority of it, of course, is in the 600, which is the hardening of our schools. We've got about 38% for salaries and benefits, which represents the school resource officers, police officers, and our guardians. Here's another picture of how the total of dollars are being spent. Again, you've got your school police salaries and benefits, 3.4. Their operational expenditures, about 1.1. The guardians, they're about less than $1 million. Their operational expense is about $75,000. As you can see, safety and security of the school facilities, about $6.1 million. And then, of course, the health insurance transfer to general fund, about $2 million. Again, this is a reoccurring transfer per school board directive last year in 1920 fiscal year, and it's a reoccurring expenditure. And there you go. You can see it's a pictorial view of how we're spending those dollars. 52% will go to facilities and 38% will go to salaries and benefits. And then the smaller percentages for the other areas. Okay. Now we're going to get into the debt service. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to remind you the conversation at our workshop about the salaries, benefits for the police department, all the expenses to work them into our general fund.
Yes.
So that if we do not go out on a millage increase or extension of this again, that they are built into the general fund.
Right. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's get into debt service. Another part of our total budget represents our debt service. Obviously, we do have loans to pay back. So we do have to set aside funding to ensure that we can make our debt payments. So our debt payments represent about 1% of the total budget. And this year, of course, our note payments is going to total about $6.8 million. These funds, of course, come from the LCIF, the 1.5 mil. So those dollars are transferred from those funds into the debt service so that we can pay our loans. And okay. Here's our breakdown of all our debt service. We've got, of course, our COPS issues, which is what the LCIF uses to pay back. Our 3 issues that we currently have in place, the 2012, the 14, and the 17. Of course, last year we have the bus lease. That is a 5-year commitment, and part of those dollars are generated from the LCIF, which is transferred to our debt service so that we can repay our payment of about $7 million.
Dr. Gutko, where do we put the money that comes in from impact fees? What do you code that under?
The impact fees is under capital.
Under capital. Is that part of the 1.5 or is that separate?
No, that's a separate funding.
Okay.
That's separate.
And my understanding before was that we had used some of the impact fees to go towards paying off debt. Is that
Yes.
correct? And we're
Yes.
still currently doing that?
Yes, some of those dollars do go into paying. So the transfer that you saw, which was about, I think it was 4.1 million, we do have a breakout of how that is paid. So
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
It's
I
not a
just-
large amount,
Right.
but it is a little bit that can help with, so that we can release some of the 1.5 mil to go for
projects at the schools.
Right, and it's been, from my understanding, several years since we've increased the impact fees.
Correct.
And we're looking at a lot of building coming in the near future, so I think that's something we need to look at as a board.
Yes.
Hey, you're going to be on Facebook. You adjusted your mask. I'm scared to touch my face.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, here is another breakdown of what our remaining debt over the next several years. It's our lease payments, of course, and it sort of breaks it down to you by year. So each year, I will need to set aside those much dollars to cover that year. So this year, again, 2021, it's about 6.9, 2021, 22. And as some of this debt goes, some of it balloons and some of it gets reduced. So we'll have to look at some of refinancing as we get to some of these ballooning payments. So again, we have a remaining debt of about $50 million, which is really pretty good for a district of our size.
Hey, I remember when it was over 100, and, you know, that looked like a lot. I think that was when Fleming Island
Right.
appeared.
Right. I
And
agree.
we had to borrow money. Yeah, okay.
Okay. Again, it's a little quick breakdown of our long-term debt, state school bonds, special acts, and of course, the majority of ours is our COPS issue, COPs, and that's in about $38 million remaining. All right, so let's get into the capital funds. Again, the major sources of our revenue for capital project funds are the 1.5 mils, which is local dollars. We've got our CONDS, capital outlay and debt service, which is generated through the state. They do give us some of those funds, and it's generated through motor vehicle license, tag money, different types of funds that's submitted to the state, and we get a proportionate share of it. Of course, we've got our PICO dollars. We used to. Again, they took it away last year, and they took it away this year. So we do not have PICO dollars, which those dollars were primarily to help with maintenance of our buildings. So again, our funding is being reduced each year, but yet our expenses are increasing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really difficult to try and balance that to, how do you pay for this if you've got to pay for that? So it's really a juggling act to try and figure out how to utilize the funds that we do generate.
Right.
And of course, we've got the impact fees. One of the things I do want to say is that in the last year or two, I would say the impact fee revenue has gone up because of the number of permits that are being pulled. Last year, we had around this time, we had 1,004 permits pulled. Right now, starting this year alone, we've got about 943 permits. What does that say? It says we're growing. It says we are definitely growing. If we only generated 1,004 for the entire year, and now, right now, we just started, and it's 943. We're going to surpass those numbers
Oh, absolutely.
exponentially.
And when that outer beltway gets, it's going to be another boom.
Okay. All right, so our total proposed budget for capital is about $28 million. Again, the majority of those dollars is being generated from our property tax, about $19.2 million. And you can see the impact fee, it's about $7.5 million. Even though we generated about $8 million last year, I would say that this budget is a conservative budget on my behalf. I want it to be conservative as we move into next year. And again, as I said, we do not know what we are going to get. The expectations are not out there yet. We don't know. So once school starts and we see where the kids are, what's happening, then we can take a look at our budget again. And of course, any changes will be brought to you on a monthly basis through my monthly financial reports. Again, how are we spending our capital project funds? You can see the majority of it will be in building and fixed equipment, and of course the remodeling and renovations. So the majority of our funds are going towards the intent, which is for projects related to building and fixed equipment and remodeling and renovations. Okay. All right, so this is a summary of where we were, where we ended up. Our revenues was about 28 million. We rolled about 30 million in fund balance. We have about $59 million. We have appropriated about 41 million. Typically what we do as part of the budget is we appropriate for the projects that are listed on that advertisement.
Okay.
So you'll notice that at the total expenditures last year was about $13 million. When we did our budget last year, it was actually the same amount. The expenditures or proposed expenditures were about the 41 million as well, because we allocate based on the projects that we plan on completing for this year. Once we go through the year and the projects are completed, then those numbers will reduce to where we will report actual. Okay? So we're hoping to end our fund balance with about 6.8. We'll see. Okay, and on the bottom it shows the transfers. I told you we would transfer about $4.1 million to the general fund. Part of that pays for our liability insurance, which is an expense to the district. And then, of course, the other transfers to the debt service to pay for our current debt, which is about $6.8 million. All right, we're getting in, and we're getting close. Getting close. All right, our next fund is our food service fund, 410, a special revenue. Again, there's two specific funds, two specific type of funding in special revenue. You've got your food and nutrition program, which is the 410, and then you've got special programs, which is our Title I, Title II programs. So those are our supplemental programs that help our current programs in our schools. So we'll start with our food service program. Again, the majority of our revenue comes from the student lunch and breakfast programs. Well, they'll generate about $4.2 million. You get a little bit of state revenue, about $145,000. And then, of course, the majority of our funds come from the federal government. And we'll generate about $13.8 million, giving us about $18.1 million for next year. Obviously, this year, $14 million is what we generated this year because of the last 3 months of COVID. So we were very low in our projected revenue coming in for food service. How we're spending our dollars, of course, it's salaries and benefits, but the majority of our expenditures are in food supplies. $7.8 million will be spent in purchasing food for the cafeterias. And again, this is a summary. You can see her fund balance has really dropped significantly for this year and even closing of last year. So something to look at, to keep an eye on.
Dr. Legatko, is that relative as far as the time frame when we saw the fund balance begin to decline to when we started expanding the free and reduced lunch program? I remember we used to only serve students who qualified, but then the program changed, and then we started serving an entire school once they reached a certain threshold.
Oh,
Did those
Right.
mirror each other with?
Not necessarily. You're
No.
talking about the CEP program,
Mhm.
when every student in the school receives
Correct.
lunch and breakfast.
Right.
No, not necessarily. The
Okay.
dip in the fund balance is as a result of COVID. I mean, we fed a
COVID.
lot of people
But
this
I mean,
year.
but the year before, I guess that's from the spring when we were out and we fed children, or I mean, because I'm seeing in 18-19 it was 5.1. I guess we're projecting another dip based on we don't know what's going to happen with school this year.
Right, right. Well, and again, the dip happened in this 1920.
Mhm.
And again, we generate about $2 or $3 million a month in revenue.
Mhm.
It's not because of the CEP program. It's really because of COVID and
COVID.
not being able to generate the dollars for the last 3-4 months. It's actually, I'd say, the last 3-4 months.
Okay.
You know, as all of this started hitting us, the revenue, we weren't getting the funds.
Right.
But
we weren't
were
getting
feeding,
the funds, but
we were spending.
Right. Correct.
So we spent our dollars. We spent what we had.
Okay.
And, you know, there really isn't any relief. Like, the federal government nor the state has not really given us any relief on the food service program. We got a little bit of relief from the state with the CARES funds. Not enough, but we got something. But for the federal program, nothing has come, and I haven't seen anything. Maybe there might be something later on. I don't know. But for right now, it's what we generated for the services that we provided.
So why do we see another $1 million decrease this school year? Before we, you know what I mean? Why are we projecting another dip?
Because again, it's conservative. We
Okay.
don't know and plus, typically what happens is what helps us carry into the next year is our fund balance.
Mhm.
So her fund, I'm saying her, I mean the food service program, which should be self-sustaining,
Mhm.
we did not pull in the amount of fund balance that we typically would because we spent more expenses than bringing in revenue. So our fund balance went down $2 million at least. Typically, it's more than, whenever I bring a budget, it's always more in the ending year.
Mhm.
So because we did not end the year with our projected fund balance, so then when we brought it over, we only brought about 3.1. Usually I'm bringing in $5 or $6 million.
Okay. So you're just
because
carrying
of
that
that,
loss forward.
but when you go back, our expenses are remaining the same.
Right.
Nothing's changed. We're still having to hire the staff. We're still having to purchase the food. We still have to feed our students.
Mhm.
So therefore, the expense remains the same. It actually will go up
Mhm.
because of cost of living and
Sure.
things like that. But that stayed the same. As a matter of fact, it went up by $2 million almost.
Right. Thank
So, does that
Uh-huh.
explain it?
Yep.
Dr. Legunka, were we required to have a certain percentage in that fund balance?
Yes, by federal guidelines, you are required to have at least 3 months of operational expenditures. For theirs, the first year for 18-19, they met their numbers. It was about 4.5 million you're supposed to have ending the year. The 19-20, your requirement is about 4.9 million. So she's pretty much low. She's below the requirement. And then, of course, this year will be 4.5, and so right with those numbers, it's about 1%, which is very low, very low.
All right, thank you.
Which, yeah, we've got to watch this fund as well.
But it was feeding the students, it was feeding the kids during those months that the schools were closed, after March 13th.
Right. Well, and also I believe we did feeding
the
as
summer.
well for, we
Throughout
provide
the
feeding
summer as well.
sites. So,
okay, just
so those.
just so people realize this wasn't intentional. It was
No, not at all.
It was making certain that our children were fed
Absolutely.
during that time.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And I would venture to guess that there are many, many other districts in the state of Florida that are in the same boat. And we have an excellent director, and I'm sure this will get remedied.
Right.
But COVID has affected a lot of areas in the budget, for sure.
Yeah. I would say with my colleagues, we're preaching the same message.
Right.
This is a budget. We
Right.
do not know what to expect.
Absolutely.
And we're hopeful that, it will be it'll be a positive turnaround and things will be back to normal, hopefully. Money-wise, anyway.
Normal. Yeah. Whatever that is.
All right, let's move on to the next fund, which is the Special Revenue Fund. And of course, that fund, those are our contracted programs, such as Title I, Title II, CTE, those types of programs. I know at our last meeting, you asked about CTE, and the reason why it's not on here, it will be in the September's budget. We did not get the information in time to be presented. But I did get it since that meeting, and it's going to be about $278,000. The state has approved for them to receive the $278,000. So you'll see in my September meeting, all of these numbers are going to change again. So, all right. One of the things that's in here also under miscellaneous federal state is 4.8. You'll notice it's very high compared to last year. The reason being is that that's where our CARES funds are. They are federal funds and required to be monitored and accounted for in the special revenue account.
Dr. Legucco, at the workshop last week, I had asked for a breakdown of the CARES funds, and
Right.
we hadn't received it yet. Would you please send that to us?
Yes, I do. I will. And as a matter of fact, I have something. I can tell you. I'll send it to you, but I also have it. The award for the ESSER. There were under the CARES, we received several funding sources. I wouldn't say several. We had four funding sources. One was the ESSER money, which was for COVID-19, so that we can utilize some of either repay what we've spent or utilize the funds that we do have, that we received to prepare for school opening. We received the GEARS funds, which that was used for the summer program. I believe the 6 weeks summer program. And then we received the Rising Kindergarten, which was, again, a summer program. And then, of course, CTE received some funding, too. But theirs was, I think theirs was like over $100,000. And the majority of how they're spending it is on Chromebooks, computers, and things like that. So for the ESSER money, which is the larger of the pot of money, it was about $4 million that we received. Part of what we've done with that money is we spent about 6% of those funds, which is about $250,000. We spent it on PPE, meaning we purchased hand sanitizers, masks, disposable gowns, gloves, the electrostatic sprayers. We bought several of those for our schools, every one of our schools. The thermometers, we did buy some thermometers as well. In addition to that, we used the money for signage. We purchased signage for our schools so that when we do reopen, they'll have the signage in the hallways and different things. I think we spent about 2% of the funding, which is about $98,000 on signage. We spent a little bit of it for professional development for training of our bus drivers. So that's about $30,000 we spent to train, will be spending on training our bus drivers. We spent about 82% of it, which is the majority of our funds, on instructional technology. We purchased the Chromebooks. We have an order in for about 7,000 Chromebooks. Part of it is to replace what we lost during the online learning earlier, and of course the rest of it is for opening of schools so that we have the equipment for our students who decides to do the online learning. We also purchased hotspots so that for those folks who do not get internet, they have the opportunity to have the hotspots. And so that was about $3.2 million.
And did you say we received 3.6 out of that 4.8?
Well, yes, part of it goes to charters. I was getting,
private
yeah.
schools. So of the 3.6,
Mm-hmm.
the technology, the Chromebooks, was that supposed to come out of that? Or was that really designed for, PPEs, plexiglass, whatever
No, it
else
was designed for
necessary?
it was specific, and they said it was for PPE, which they had several options, several things that you can use those dollars for. Of course, one of it was for the technology so that we can purchase the Chromebooks for the for online learning. That was one of it. It was also that we can use it for oh, I lost my train of thought. PPE. One of the things that they did recommend is that we can actually replenish what we spent. The first go around, I believe I spent about $1.8 million purchasing all of the hand sanitizers and the equipment and all of the things that we needed immediately when we were directed to shut down. However, I think based on our revenues and what we had, my recommendation was not to try and replenish what we already spent, but let's look at what we will need. And in my opinion, replenishing those Chromebooks was needed in addition to trying to purchase the PPE that we did. I mean, right now we have purchased the PPE for the schools to support them for at least 6 months to 8 months. We will continue to purchase to allow them to have the materials that they need in the schools so that we can carry on school safely
So
for our students.
what was the amount on the computers, the Chromebooks?
It was about $2 million.
$2 million. Did that come to the board? Did that
The
come
$2
to us
million?
for approval?
I do not
I don't
believe
believe it
so.
did it?
Right.
Now, so something of that magnitude,
Right.
shouldn't that have come to the board for approval?
I believe because of the emergency order, we were able to order the materials so that it would be, it will be here in time. I believe it will be part of the listing of the contracts that we bring to you based on our new policy. At the end with the financials, it will show up on that report, so you'll see that we are purchasing this much. We had this contract, we did this with Gov Connection for purchasing of the equipment. So,
It seems like something that large should have come to the board for board approval, even though it was necessary and
Right.
needed. I agree. But, the spending falls under the board, so I'm just surprised that we've spent all that money
right.
without it coming to the board for the board to see what we're spending it on and approving, because we're responsible for the budget.
Right, and it is part of the budget. It is part of, right now, as we're presenting the different things that's going, I'm letting you know that 4.8 million of this is the CARES funding. And again.
I'd like to see if you'd send it to all the
yes,
board,
I
the
will.
printout of itemized of what
Yes.
has gone to what.
Okay,
How much
I
has
will.
been spent.
I will.
Thank you.
And again, of course, part of it, the equitable services to our charter schools. I wanted to make sure about 7% of the total award, and that's about $265,000 that will go to the charters for the same type of items. They are to spend it in the same manner as we have. So
Dr. Legutko, is that just charters or is that also private schools?
private schools as well.
Because that's
Right.
unique in this, in that the federal money was given to us, the federal state money was given to us, but normally it's just share with the charters. In this particular situation, they said not just charters, but charters
Right.
and private schools
And the
as
private
well.
schools,
So
yeah.
Were the private schools obligated to accept that money? Did they all in Clay County accept the federal funding?
No, I believe they could refuse to spend it.
Did we
They-
have any of that?
I do not know. I can find out for you.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, of course, part of it, because it's federal, we can take indirect cost. So that's about 2%, which is about $71,000 that comes in. Of course, the GEARS money, which is it was only about $372,000. Those funds were used for salaries and benefits for the summer program and for also PPE. We did buy some PPE as well. We bought masks, gloves, hand sprayers for the buses as well. We bought the curriculum, the supplies that they needed for the programs. And, of course, transportation, and again, the charters and received, the private and the charters received about 24,000 of those dollars. So, and that was the gears, and of course, the pre-K, it was about 172,000. Salaries and benefits were spent. They did write in some incentives for our teachers. Let's see, bus drivers, we paid for that, for the bus drivers, kindergarten screening, masks. We also bought some PPE as well, so out of the 172,000, a little bit of about $2,000 was spent for masks for those classrooms. The supplies and curriculum, Chromebooks, we did buy some more Chromebooks, about 7,000 worth of Chromebooks. And private schools didn't, or charters didn't get any of those dollars. So that's how we spent the CARES money that we have received or will be receiving. We actually haven't received it yet. Expenditures in federal, expenditures are based on expenditures. So we've got to spend it first to draw the funds down, to replenish it. So we're
Well,
fronting.
in the
General fund is
future,
fronted.
before you spend it, bring it to the board.
Yes. All right, so how are we spending the federal funds? Obviously, again, this is by function, function, and the majority of those funds are being spent in salaries and benefits, so to supplement our programs at the school. Object-wise, again, you can see the majority of our expenses are in salaries and benefits and equipment. So. And this is a summary of our total funds for summary of revenues and expenditures for federal funds. We are not allowed to maintain a fund balance. So again, we draw down the funds as we spend the funds, and then we draw down the funds. So we're never receiving additional funding. It is what we spend. So we cannot have a fund balance. There was an adjustment to the 18-19, and that was after the audit report. That's why you're seeing a little adjustment there to our federal funds in 18-19. Okay, and finally, we're in the self-insurance program, which is our liability program. It funds our property, our automobile, workers' comp, any type of accidents and things like that we do incur throughout the year. So it is a self-insurance program. Basically, we are the doctors, we are we are the adjusters, we are everything, basically. That's why we have John's Eastern, which is that third party that I brought to to you guys to allow to assist us in managing these claims. So, of course, this one, our operating revenue is about 2.9. I'm projecting about 2.9. Our expenditures is about 2.7, so we're looking at about 169 over what we're going to generate in revenues. So we are continuing to maintain our net assets of about $4.8 million. In order to maintain this program, it's a self-insurance program. As you know, for self-insurance, we are required to maintain a certain fund balance in order to operate. Annually, we do have an actuary service that does an analysis of our program, and they provide a recommendation of what our fund balance should look like in order for us to continue to operate effectively and pay our claims. And the recommendation, of course, is to continue to maintain our $4 million net asset, which is sort of like our fund balance. So, for instance, if there's any claims that we do receive, if we are sued by someone or some company or whatnot, we do have some retentions. However, we do pay out the cost. Our workers' comp, for those folks that do get hurt, injured on the job. Typically, there are surgeries and those types of activities that we do pay, and it's in the thousands of dollars, and it's dollar for dollar. It is not, an insurance. We don't have the benefit of getting a reduced number. So if there's a shoulder injury, a leg injury, or any type, and multiple ones, in order to correct the problem, the district does pay for those expenses, and it's significant every month. So that's why we maintain the $4 million fund balance there, so that we can pay our claims. Okay. Okay, that is the end of my presentation. We now have the next steps, which is to adopt the millage rates and approve the tentative budget, and of course, to set the public hearing for September 3rd, 2020, to adopt the final millage and the budget for 2020-2021 school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Legatko. Item number 2, public hearing for comments on the 2020-2021 budget and millages. I'll open a public hearing. If anyone here who would like to comment on the budget or the millages? Okay. I'll bring it back to the board. I'll entertain a motion. Oh, you don't need action on this? Okay.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Number 3, adopt the 2020-2021 required local effort millage levy. I'll entertain a motion.
I move that the Clay County School Board adopt the 2021 final proposed required local effort mill levy of 3.641 with a proposed amount to be raised of $49,310,556. The RLE millage includes basic RLE of 3.635 and a prior period adjustment millage of 0.006.
Second it.
I have a motion by Ms. Bola, a second by Ms. Bullock. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And then let's vote real quick. Okay. Number 4, adopt the 2020-2021 basic discretionary operating millage levy. I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion that the Clay County School Board adopt the 2021 final proposed base discretionary millage of .748 with a proposed amount to be raised of $10,130,265.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Bullock, a second by Ms. Karakas. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Number 5, adopt the 2020-2021 local capital improvement fund millage levy. I'll entertain a motion.
I move that the Clay County School Board adopt the 2020-2021 final proposed capital outlay millage of 1.500 with the proposed amount to be raised of $20,314,703.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Karakas, a second by Mrs. Gilhousen. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, number 6, adopt the 2020-2021 additional voted operating millage levy.
I move that the Clay County School Board adopt the 2020-2021 final proposed voted millage of 1.0 with a proposed amount to be raised of $13,543,135.
Second?
Have a motion by Mrs. Gilhousen, a second by Mrs. Bola. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Next, adopt the 2020-2021 total millage levy.
I move that the Clay County School Board adopt the 2020-2021 final proposed total millage, which will equal 6.889, with a total amount to be raised of $93,298,660. The total millage rate to be levied is more than the rollback rate of 2.44%.
I second that.
I have a motion by Mrs. Bola, a second by Mrs. Bullock. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Okay. Number 8, adopt the 2020-2021 tentative budget, all funds, and set the public hearing for the 2020-2021 final budget Thursday, September the 3rd, 2020 at 6 p.m. I'll entertain a motion.
I so move that the Clay County School Board adopt the tentative budget for the 2021 school year as follows. General operating in the amount of $357,172,959. Special revenue budget in the amount of $41,826,532. Debt service budget in the amount of $7,545,198. Capital outlay budget in the amount of $59,097,700 for a total final budget of $465,641,696, and set the public hearing on the final budget for Thursday, September the 3rd, 2020 at 6 p.m.
Well, that was a mouthful.
It was.
Congratulations for getting that out.
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Bullock, a second by Mrs. Karakis. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Tina, I'm proud of you.
More money that's in my bank account, I can tell you that.
Oh, me. Okay, number 9, Resolution 21-01, determining 2020 to 2021 tentative millages.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Ms. Karakis, second by Mrs. Gilhousen. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Okay. Number 10, Resolution 21-02, adopting the 2020-2021 tentative budget.
I'll move approval.
I'll second it.
Have a motion by Mrs. Gilhousen, a second by Mrs. Bola. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Oh, okay. Okay, number 11, Clark School for the Deaf Agreement 2019 through 2021. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Have a motion by Mrs. Bola, second by Ms. Gilhousen. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Number 12, adopt superintendent's memorandum in support of declaration of emergency and approve the emergency adoption implementation of the 2020 through 2021 Clay County District Schools Smart Restart School Reopening Plan. So this is a declaration of emergency. On your paper,
It's also approving the plan, though. It's both. It's not just the one, it's both. Did you have any cards on this?
Are there two?
oh, wait a
Two
minute, I have
motions.
2 cards, hang on.
Cards
Wait.
have to come first.
Okay, all right, we only have 2 cards.
Does Mr. Bickner have?
Mr. Bickner? Oh,
Oh, so we do the cards before the first.
okay. No, there's 3 cards I counted. Shannon Hube?
Hi, Shannon Hubie, address is 3654.
Wait, I'm not sure. Is your mic? Pull it toward your mouth.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Shannon Hubie, address is 3654 Thousand Oaks Drive, Orange Park, Florida, 32065. I'm here today, as I have been here before, in regards to the ESE situation. I have some concerns about how interacting with our children with disabilities will be implemented during the Smart Reopen and our plans for the school year. I haven't seen anything related to this in regard to the generality of the plan. And if there is, it has not been relayed to the ESC parents. So my questions are, how are we going to be assisting with their personal care? We have kids going into kindergarten and first grade and PPK who, due to their disabilities, are not potty trained, so they must be changed. What about their medical needs? What about assisting them with eating? All of these are going to require closer than our 6-foot distances that are being implemented. What about intervening with during a behavior challenge? What will that look like? Safe crisis management. You have ASD students. These students are incredibly strong. How is that going to be handled? What about kids that respond to human touch? You have a lot of these ASD kids that require that to thrive. As a teacher and a parent, I went through our distance learning with these children at home. I have 2 special needs boys, plus I have students who have IEPs. Our only 2 options right now for ESE is brick and mortar and the one clay. And I can tell you now, living through it, the one clay and Edgenuity was not beneficial for these kids at all. Luckily, as a teacher, I had the ability to implement things in my home. There are parents out there who don't have that luxury. Many of these ESC students need to be treated differently. ESC parents need to know the details, like our non-disabled students' parents are receiving them. I get each school setting is setting up their own plans, but have students with disabilities been considered in these plans? I know that my school's worked really hard on that. And one last thing to consider, I want you to mark my words, that if y'all thought bullying was bad before, it's going to be so much worse this year with germs and kids not wanting to be touched and all of these bubbles that are coming out there. And I'm praying that God can protect the fragile hearts and minds of these poor kids. It's going to be one hell of a ride this school year in the brick and mortar population. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Robin Rapper.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to leave my mask on.
Okay.
I would like to comment also on what the last speaker just said about the needs for ESE students. I am support staff. My teachers depend upon me. My students know me. I am, as you can see, an older employee with an underlying health condition. My doctor has confirmed that I'm at serious risk. I'm very conflicted about going back to school, and I am not alone. I am told that our options are to return to work, to retire, to take a year off, or we can take up to 12 weeks of leave time, unpaid. If it is approved, if we can assume the full cost of our insurance, if I understand that I may not be returned to the same classroom after 12 weeks, this leave would not be covered under short or long-term disability. Unemployment considers medical leave, even with doctor's consent, to be a refusal of work, which would eliminate, they say that it's a job offer on the table, that it would eliminate those of us who apply for or who are now on it from being disqualified. My understanding is that with the new DEO provisions that are still not in place yet, they would be attached to the state unemployment. So in other words, if you're not eligible for state, you would no longer be eligible for whatever DEO unemployment they provide. I am here to ask the board, you all have the ear of the governor, to make sure that there are some online options available for support staff. There are many more of us than you may think. And those who do have to take medical leave should be eligible for unemployment or some other sort of assistance. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next, Amy Fears.
Hi, my name is Amy Fayers, and my address is on file. So I wanted to thank you all for the work you've done on this so far, and I think mandating masks for students grades 3 through 6 has been a really good move, or the talk of mandating masks so far has been a good move. I wanted to encourage you to mandate masks for all grade levels. It's not going to be fun for students or teachers, but according to science, it's something that is necessary. In the past 8 days in Florida, there has been a 34% increase in COVID cases in children under the age of 17 years old. The number has gone from 23,170 to 31,150. Also, in the past 8 days, there's been a 23% increase in the number of children requiring hospitalization in Florida, going from 246 to 303. The truth is we don't know how this virus is going to affect us in the school setting because we haven't been in the school setting since it started. This hasn't been proven, but I wonder if some of these cases are from school camps or, I mean, we just really don't know yet, so that's just assumptions. Personally, I'm terrified about going back to work and not feeling optimistic about the numbers. I see how a common cold spreads in my class like wildfire. Because of the governor's mandate, we'll be on campus during this global pandemic, and I fear that the numbers after a month in school are going to skyrocket. With that being said, it's the job of our school district to require as many safeguards as possible, especially because it's essentially impossible to be socially distanced in classrooms and throughout the school. We know positive cases in students won't necessarily translate into sick students, but it will cause a spread among teachers, parents, and grandparents. And it is frightening now that we're seeing more young children get sick. So I would like for you to consider masks for all grade levels, as it is our #1 job of educators to keep our students safe. Thank you.
Okay. And we did have one online comment that came in, and I was asked to read this. I sent an email with my full explanation. I am requesting that the board votes to allow masks to be optional, a parent's choice. I believe parents chose to send their schools to brick and mortar school when masks were optional. Parents who wanted masks could have chosen for their child to go to school virtually. Also, there is a lot of research that shows that the masks do not benefit the children because they are touching their eyes, nose, and mouth more often due to trying to put the mask back on. If this is not possible, please consider voting each month about masks as COVID changes weekly. Thank you for listening and for all you do. Michelle Poyet, mom of 3 Clay County students. So that's read into the record. Okay, now, the first motion that I need is that we adopt the superintendent's resolution finding that there is an emergency need to approve the reopening plan. I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we adopt the superintendent's resolution finding that there is an emergency need to approve the reopening plan.
I need a second. Hello? Is there a second?
I'll second so we can discuss it.
Okay. Have a motion by Mrs. Bowl and a second by Mrs. Bullock. Okay, let's discuss. This is that there is an emergency need to approve the reopening plan. So who wants to start the discussion?
I just have something that I want to read, if that's okay.
Surely.
Okay, good evening. First, thank you for your emails and your phone calls. I apologize if I did not answer everyone, but I read everyone's email. My ancient laptop now needs major CPR. However, with each email I read, I felt your compassion, concern, fear, hope, hopelessness, and the need to return to normalcy. There will definitely be a new school normal. Let me say first, we are an educational facility where we do groups, teams, ensembles, collaborative learning, and so on. We are not designed for this. We are not a medical facility. Even the medical facilities are struggling to meet the needs of everyone who comes through their doors. Even they do not have all the answers. The goal is to return to educating our students as safely as we can. Is this plan perfect? Is any plan perfect? The answer is no. I appreciate those parents who are able to have their students work from home. However, we have parents who are unable to do this, and for those students, they need to be receiving the best and safest education we can provide at our schools. Our students need emotional support, food services, as well as a great education. I also believe the face-to-face teaching that our teachers do is unparalleled. I don't want anyone to be at risk. There are no guarantees in life, only that we do as much as we can with the resources we have to make this happen. Parents, I ask that you work with your children on their personal responsibilities to each other and to the teachers and employees that will make this happen. We all need to be part of the solution. Thank you for all your patience and understanding. Now, Mr. Broski, the question I have is for you. I need to know, and I need to believe, and so does the public, that the restart plan is yours and the district staff's recommendation to this board. I believe we are all in this together, and we all need to be on the same page together. Yes, yes.
I would say that absolutely there has to be unity in the plan. I mean, there's no doubt that this is unprecedented. We've never, ever shut down our school system for that long a time frame, and now attempting to open it up in these conditions. So when I look at this particular situation with 1/4 of our population choosing an online option, most definitely we would all have to be in favor of the plan.
Any other discussion?
I'll say that my only true pause with the plan as far as approval hasn't changed from the last time we discussed the plan. I'm not in favor of a mandate for face masks. I believe it should be strongly recommended. I think we should use the language that the Department of Health and the CDC uses when they address the subject of face masks. And that's my stipulation for approving this plan. I think school needs to open. I'm not arguing that. And I know that we need a plan in order to do that. But that's the caveat problem that I have with the plan. And I don't think that comes as any surprise to any of you. I expressed that at our last meeting.
Okay,
May
this
I?
is to declare that there is an emergency need. We need, on the next motion, we can talk about the mechanics inside the plan, but right now, we just need to get this approved, that this is an emergency need, because we do have school, it's gonna be starting soon, and our teachers, so at least we need to get beyond declaring it an emergency, and then we can get into the meat of it on the second motion.
So why exactly do we need to declare an emergency to approve the plan?
Okay, Mr. Brodsky, Mr. Bickner, someone want to answer Ms. Carrickus?
The reason you need to declare an emergency is because there is no way to approve this in the time limit that's been given to you by Commissioner Corcoran and meet the requirements of 120.54, which is the Administrative Procedures Act. The only way to get around that is to make a determination that that a condition exists which threatens the health, safety, and welfare of individuals or the population of the state as a whole, or in this instance, school students and teachers and others in the community. If you don't declare an emergency, then we have to go through the whole process of the APA, which you're going to have to do anyway. All this does is short circuit it for the initial approval, and then during the next 90 days, it has to be brought back and go through the full panoply or the full gamut of all of the things needed to approve it. But in order to get it in place now, and when I say it, I'm talking about the reopening plan, whatever it is, there has to be a declaration of emergency. And the emergency is simply this: if you don't do it, we don't meet the requirements. And if we don't meet the requirements, we don't get the funding or any of the other incentives that the Commissioner of Education has said exist for those who meet the requirements of the reopening plan. And if you don't do that, then I'm not sure how you're going to fund your school system. But then I'm not the academic that has to do with the finances. But that's the nature of the emergency, and it's spelled out very clearly in the resolution itself.
And so you're bringing this to us because the Commissioner of Education on July 6th, and there's not enough time, and that's why there's an
I
emergency.
think it's what I just said, yes.
Very good, okay.
There's not enough time to do it through the normal processes. The emergency is that we have to open schools in about anywhere from on the 11th to the 24th, sometime before September 1, and there's no time to meet the obligations in order to do that.
And I know I spoke to you about it, Mr. Bickner, and I know that there are districts that are not voting on this, although I can't tell you which ones off the top of my head right now. But if this board didn't declare an emergency and didn't take action on this, superintendent can still send his plan in, correct?
I don't believe that you can do that. And the reason I don't believe you can do that, I don't care what other districts do. I'm not their lawyer. But the way that I read the Administrative Procedures Act, when I look at the definitions under 120.52, a rule means any agency statement of general applicability that implements, interprets, or prescribes law or policy or describes procedure or practice requirements of an agency, which this does, and includes any form which imposes any requirement or solicits information not specifically required by statute, which this does, or an existing rule. If you do that, then that's a rule. And if it's a rule, it has to be adopted according to 120.54. And 120.54 is very specific. To me, the reopening plan is a rule. And I don't care that some counties say that they're not adopting it that way. Miami-Dade's attorneys adopted it that way. Pinellas County adopted it that way. Polk County adopted it that way. Orange County adopted it that way, and the list goes on and on and on and on. I don't know what Gilchrist County does, and in the way that they practice there, it doesn't concern me what they do. what I think and what my recommendation is this needs to be adopted by this board. And if it's not adopted by this board, then it does not exist.
I guess my thought is reading the executive order, and I've spoken with you, so what I'm saying is nothing that you haven't heard already, is that it seems very vague, and it refers to the plan as the superintendent's plan. And, I will go ahead and vote on it. It's not an issue. It's not like I'm opposed to voting on this.
In the
I
very
certainly
first,
will. I question why, and if what you're saying is accurate, and I'm sure, you're the attorney and I'm not, but I'm going to read what it says here. Whereas, because the district's reopening plan meets the definition of a rule, it must be approved by the school board prior to implementation and submission to the FDOE for approval and must comply with the adoption process prescribed in section 120.54. And then the other section you have, number 2, it says school board policy in the form of the 2021 Clay County School District Smart Restart Reopening Plan must be adopted in order to comply with the requirements of the Commissioner's emergency order and to further protect the public, students, employees of the district from partial loss of funding of the school district. So I understand what you're saying. And I understand you're saying that this has to fall under 120.54. But what I take issue with is that this is being brought to the board, but there's so many other things that are not brought to the board. Like, oh gosh, the graduation process, whether we had graduation or not. There's just so many other things. And if we're going to use this 120.54, then I expect everything to come to the board in the future, including spending. I mean, I feel like the superintendent and staff are picking and choosing what items they're bringing to us. And this one here is the superintendent's plan. It had no input from the board. It was presented to the board individually. You met with each of us, met with me at 2 o'clock on a Thursday, and it was shared with parents, sent out to parents right after that. And that was a draft, you told me. That wasn't even the final plan. So parents were given the final plan or the plan before board even had a chance to discuss it. So I just take exception with all of that. I understand, Mr. Bickner, you're our attorney and you're keeping us legal and safe. And I thank you for that. And don't be offended that I'm asking questions. This is my opportunity to ask those questions. But and of course, like I said, it's not anything you and I hadn't talked about already. I just kind of think that, I will certainly participate in this vote, but I don't agree with this vote.
okay, may I point out one thing? I don't have the executive order here with me because I thought we were beyond that order. But if you look at the very first sentence under the reopening plan, it says, upon reopening in August, all school boards must open brick and mortar schools at least 5 days per week for students, subject to the advice and orders of the Florida Department of Health, local, blah, blah, blah. And then it goes on to lay out that process. And that process is what this comes down to, is the reopening plan. All school boards have to do this. It doesn't say the superintendent has to do this. Now, they erroneously use the term district throughout this executive order, which makes no sense.
They
I
don't
didn't
say
write the
school
executive
board.
order. I think it's poorly written. If you look at the definitions of school district, it is a geographical area. It is not a person. It is not a board. It is not an individual superintendent. It is a space in the earth. That's all it is. And so when it says one school board has to do this, I see that as this board acting as a legislative body, meeting its requirements under 120.54 and doing those things because it is a rule that they have to create. And that's the way that I read it, and that's the way that everyone in the state that I respect reads it.
Of course, it doesn't say school boards, it does say school district. And when the data, you're talking about the day-to-day, that falls under the superintendent. But thanks for your input, Mr. Bickner. I appreciate it.
Is there any other discussion?
Well, I don't necessarily have a problem with voting on the emergency order, except
either.
that it states in there, or I'm sorry, not the emergency order, but the declaration resolution of, you know, the need for adopting the plan. But the caveat for me is we haven't, and I don't have the plan where I want it to be.
Well,
And
that
I'm
comes
gonna-
on the next agenda item.
I understand that, but
But it's all written together
it
like it's
is.
one
Under
item.
number 2, it says the school board policy in the form that it's currently written must be adopted in order to comply. And I
Well,
don't agree
or,
with
there's
it.
an or here. There's two different versions of motion 2.
She's reading the declaration to you.
Right. On I'm sorry, no, I should have been clear. The memorandum in support of declaration of emergency, the backup that's on our agenda that we're voting on the second page, number 2, it reads, school board policy in this form must be adopted. And I don't agree with that. So I can't support that.
Okay, Mr. Bickner, would you like to
Okay.
address that, please?
When you read that and it says in the form of the 2021 Clay County School District Smart Schools Restart School Reopening Plan must be adopted, that exists here in one form. But it's here for you, and as we stated in the last meeting, it's something that you can change and amend and add to. And that's why I gave you a motion in 2 forms. The motion says, 1, you can adopt it as written, or 2, as further instructed and agreed to by the board. Now, when we talked about what I was to add to that, the last time we came here and discussed things, I was given specific marching orders. I went back the other day and listened to the entire board meeting on that section again to make sure that what I did was exactly what the 5 of you told me to do. Okay, with the exception of you, Mrs. Gelhausen, every single one of you said, go create this.
Oh,
And
I'm
I
not
did
arguing
exactly
that.
that.
I'm not arguing that.
Okay.
And I said
Now-
that I
now-
made my stance clear. And so that's why I'm saying I have trouble supporting it because it doesn't reflect.
It doesn't reflect
What
what
I-
you want.
correct,
I understand that.
Correct.
But the whole idea of being here tonight, and the reason I gave you 2 separate motion substances, is so that you can do whatever you want to do. And I think the superintendent, when he and I discussed it beforehand, he said, make sure you give them an option so that they can change what they choose to change to make it what they believe be. But we need to walk out of here with
Okay.
a
so
restart
what-
reopening order,
what is
whatever
the-
that is.
What's the motion that's on the table?
There-
currently?
The only
The
motion
motion on
that's
the
on the
table is to
table right
approve.
now is to adopt the emergency resolution, which says we got to go forward because there's not enough time to do it with the full measure, and there is a danger to the health, safety, and welfare of the public. That's all
I-
this motion is.
I can support the version of the motion that says that I move that we approve the emergency adoption and implementation of the plan, incorporating the changes that could potentially be
But-
made when we take up the issue of the plan.
But that's not the motion that's before you.
I
It's a
understand that.
two-step process.
Right.
You got to get to one
We just
before you
want
can
it to
even
be declared
consider
an
the next
emergency
2.
right now.
Right, but she's saying she doesn't want to approve the emergency because of item number 2 on the
Right.
second page of the declaration,
Right.
which says that she's in agreement with the smart reopening plan, and she's not.
I'm not in agreement with it, and I can't vote and say that I am when I'm not. And I'm trying to work with you all to make because I believe this emergency order needs to go in place. I believe we need a plan, and it needs to happen tonight. But I can't approve a plan that I don't want to adopt as it is written currently.
Okay,
Mr.
so
What
Baker,
about
is
this?
there a
Then
way
let
to
me
change
make
the
a
Mr.
wording?
Bickner,
suggestion.
could we say,
Let me make a suggestion if you
that's
may.
what I was just,
All right, if you go to number 2, and if you allow, there were only 2 people that signed this resolution. One was me and the other was Mr. Brodsky. I signed it simply because I wrote it. But if you go to it and you change number 2 so that it says, school board policy in the form of the 2020-2021 Clay County District Schools Smart Restart School Reopening Plan as written or as amended,
okay.
okay, must be adopted. And that gives you the latitude to
written or
change
amended.
it
Okay.
or add to or subtract from. You see what
Okay.
I'm saying?
That doesn't
Are you
really help
agreeable
her
with
though,
that?
because if it's amended to something that she's still not in agreement with when we vote on the plan, she's already voted to approve an emergency that she still doesn't agree with.
That's not going to hurt anything if we have declared it an emergency. Then we can talk about what you like and you don't like in the plan. But right now, this is more or less a formality.
Do we have to say that this specific policy must be adopted, or could we say that there's an emergency and a reopening plan must be put in place, as opposed to this emergency plan?
Yeah, you could say that.
I would be more comfortable with that.
So in changing the motion,
Mhm.
it would say, move that we adopt the superintendent's resolution. This is the resolution, not the plan, okay? Finding that there's an emergency need to approve a reopening plan.
But the resolution
The
itself
declaration has to
The
change.
resolution itself,
needs to change.
A reopening plan.
Instead of specifying this reopening plan
Correct.
under number 2, and it's listed in 3 and 4, it refers specifically to this plan. I believe it needs to say a reopening plan.
that's why I'm saying.
If you
I
change
could
D to A,
amend-
are you okay?
But it needs to be amended that in the resolution as well, not just
Right.
in the motion.
In the resolution itself. Oh, I see, okay.
Your motion is
You're-
still fine, what you,
You just you wanted to change the resolution
Correct.
itself.
Right.
Got it.
Says
and I agree with you.
a reopening.
A reopening plan.
Okay, if you got that, Mr. Bickner?
Yes, I do.
But it is in several spots in here.
So.
Right, so anywhere it lists this specific, when it says the verbiage exactly is the 2020-2021 Clay County District Schools Smart Restart School Reopening Plan. Wherever it says that, it needs to just simply say a reopening plan,
Okay.
Okay.
and then I can support
I
it.
understand what you're.
I have a
acknowledge
motion
that,
by
and I
Mrs.
endorse
Bola.
that.
No,
Did-
Mr. Bickner,
Yes, ma'am.
would I need to take my motion back then?
Rescind.
I think you can simply restate your motion to say, I move to adopt the
Emergency.
superintendent's resolution as amended, finding that there's an emergency need to approve a
So
reopening
add the
plan.
words as amended.
Yes.
Finding that there is an emergency need to approve a reopening plan.
Yes.
Okay.
So those
Now,
two changes.
May I
The
point out one
superintendent's
thing?
resolution as amended,
As amended.
and then a
A
reopening
reopening
plan.
plan.
Yes.
Okay.
May I point out one thing? I sent this out twice, and on each time I asked for input. The only person that gave me input was Mrs. Bola. And when she gave me input, I changed to meet her needs and her objections. If anyone had called and talked to me or sent me an email, we would not be doing this right now. That's all I ask for you, is to help me to help you. When I
Mr.
send you
Bickner, I don't
something,
remember seeing this prior to the meeting. I know you sent several emails, and I've read each one, and the backup that was sent was versions of a face mask policy, and then what other counties were doing. Those were the emails that I received from you. And I apologize if it was my failure to see your email, but
well, maybe I'm
I
wrong.
had a conversation
I
with
think
the
it was just on the
superintendent.
backup.
I had a conversation with the superintendent prior to the meeting, and it is always my goal to never have surprises at a board meeting. And if I had
don't like it
known
at all.
the order of this, and I apologize, I don't mean to cause extra work or frustration for anybody. I'm just trying to get it right. And
Me too.
I apologize. I wish we could have addressed this before the meeting.
Well, and I really didn't even, I went through the backup and looked at it, but not until this afternoon, and we spoke this morning, did this pop out at me, just before coming here, so, and sitting here looking at it and agreeing with what Ms. Gilhousen is
It's okay,
saying,
you're fine, Ashley.
I'm in agreement with it. So, sorry, I'm sorry, we say, but let's just vote.
Okay, I have a motion by Mrs. Bola, a second by Mrs. Bullock. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Okay. Now, before we get to motion 2 with the options on it. Ms. Dennis, you wanted to address a couple things in the plan, in the proposed plan?
Yes, if you'll notice, I had tabbed for you all page 13 because part of the assurances from the state in their reopening plan that we have to send to them under Assurance 1 is if there was to be a change in our calendar, we would need to link that. So I have left on page 13 a highlighted area of where if there was a change, that's where it would go.
Okay.
And then on page 36, there was an addition of Appendix B, which would be guidelines for our childcare that are in our high school childcare centers. So in addition to what else is in the plan, it would be this bulleted list in addition to.
Okay. Is that it? Okay. Well, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move approval with the amendment that the face mask policy states that face masks are strongly recommended.
For everybody? For the whole K
Correct.
through 12?
Correct. They're strongly recommended when social distancing is not possible.
I have a motion by Ms. Gilhousen. Is there a second? Motion dies for lack of a second. Okay, I'll entertain another motion.
I move that we approve the emergency adoption and implementation, how do we do this?
The restart plan.
Just think,
For the restart plan, reopening plan,
As presented,
as written,
As
as
written.
presented.
if that's what you're waiting on.
Well,
I'm not trying to put
I
words in
know
your mouth.
that, I know that there's some concern about changes and further discussion, I think. So I'm going to, if I may, can I start over?
okay.
Do over. I move that we approve the emergency adoption and implementation of the 2021 Clay County Schools reopening plan, incorporating changes that we may direct to Mr. Brodsky, Mr. Bickner, and the superintendent to make. I'll do it that way.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Bola, a second by Ms. Gilhousen. Now we can talk about
Right.
some of the, let's see, let me write down who made the motion. Bola and
And
Gilhousen, okay. Okay. So do you want to start with anything you'd like changed?
Do you want to start with the masks, Ms. Gilhousen?
We can, sure.
If you would, if you have anything prepared, or?
I mean, I don't really have, I don't want to get into a debate about face masks.
Correct.
For me, this is strictly about a policy. And I think that it would be wise to continue the same language that the CDC and the Department of Health are using in regards to face masks, which is that they are highly recommended when social distancing is not possible.
Any other discussion? Any discussion? Let's talk about it. This is a hot,
And I'm speaking, I guess, as I've been thinking about this and hearing, yes, hundreds of emails. I'm certain the superintendent's office has had thousands, as we forward all of ours to you as well. And there are many people who do not want face masks required of their children. There are also a lot of people who say, I want face masks required for my children as they go into the schools. I've talked with people in the transportation area. I've talked with people in the cafeteria areas. I've talked with many people, and it's like, I've got this balance. I've got this balance of people saying, well, yes, well, no. And I take it back to how at the start of every school year, as a teacher, I would have a new group of children coming in. And there's always been a, you know, sort of an unwritten rule, and Tina, you may think of this or not, but, I'm sorry, Ms. Bullock.
That's good.
But it's one of those things where the first week of school, first few days of school, maybe even the first month of school, and it generally happens after Thanksgiving and it happens after Christmas, you have to work on policies, procedures, how we're going to do things, how we're going to treat each other, how we're going to, the rules for the classroom. And I would prefer, I guess, from my personal feelings, as well as those that people have given to me via their emails, I tend to feel that I would treat this issue in many respects as I would the first days of school. I would be a little bit more, shall we say, stringent. I would be a little bit more protective. I would be a little bit more by the rules to start with. And as we talked about the policy as part of this plan only. This is not a policy that we're changing within our entire school district plan, just for this reopening plan. And starting with a tougher policy and being able to open it up as we progress, as we see how many children are we going to have in these seats. We're looking at the mandate, but we're also, I'm looking at the exceptions. I'm considering those ASD students. I'm considering the ESE kids. I'm considering, I mean, there was an email from a teacher who said, I'm not, and it may have been you, I'm not going to be able to have masks on my children. They will not be able to wear masks. Those are the exceptions. There are exceptions built into this. I've heard from teachers who have said, I want to start with a mask plan, and in part of my mask plan, and this is, here again, this is an elementary mind thinking here, I'm gonna have mask breaks. They're not going to be sitting there for 7 hours with a mask on. I've been sitting here for almost 4 hours with a mask on practically. And those mask breaks are incredibly important as well. We've heard from families who've said, we want our kids to be able to be kids. We want this to be normal. We want this to be, it's not normal right now, gang. It's not normal. And we've never been through this before. So we don't know what we're going to be doing with this. We are at a point where many of the medical professionals are saying cloth coverings help to maybe slow this growth down, slow this pandemic down. We're being told by our governor, by our Department of Education, we want you in those closed classrooms, and we want you teaching brick and mortar. You know, 3 months ago, parents were online saying, oh my God, the teachers are the most wonderful people in the world. I don't know how they do this job. I don't know how they, you know, I understand now it's not the teacher's fault, it was my kid's fault. You know? And we saw all of those. And now, wow, 180. Why, you know, they shouldn't, why are they whining about going back to school? We're all looking at this with so much trepidation, so much anxiety. I understand that there are a lot of kids out there who may be anxious with a face covering like this. I understand that. But there are a lot of kids who are anxious about walking into a classroom. There are a lot of kids who are anxious about sitting next to that student versus that student.
But Ms. Bola, the difference is that one is a behavior. They're uncomfortable or anxious about a behavior. Wearing a face mask is a medical intervention. And from my perspective, my background's in nursing.
Yes.
When I care for a patient and I'm providing medical intervention for that patient, it is never without their consent. And it's difficult for me to mandate a healthcare intervention that applies to everybody across the board and does not require anybody's consent. Now, I understand that there are exceptions, but as a medical professional, there are exceptions. It still requires consent. it, and I do know there are healthcare providers who are recommending face masks. There are healthcare providers who are
Absolutely opposed to it.
exactly. There's medical opinion and there's science on both sides of the issue. I think it's a fair statement to say that the science isn't clear. And so to mandate a healthcare intervention when you have, and my training as a nurse, through school, what we relied on for evidence-based practice was randomized controlled clinical trials. And all of the randomized controlled clinical trials that I have reviewed in preparing for this policy, the statement continually is that more studies need to be done. The evidence is inconclusive. So I have a really hard time mandating something that's a healthcare intervention when we're not basing it on evidence-based practice, and it's without consent. And frankly, it's not an invasive thing, but it is difficult to manage. I think we can at least all agree on that. I think it's not easy to wear a face mask for 6 hours a day when you're 6 years old. So this is my struggle with it, and that's why I'm wearing a face mask. It's not that I'm opposed to anybody wearing a face mask. The struggle for me comes in just what I explained, that when you're taking somebody's choice away and mandating something as it pertains to a child's health care, that's a big decision.
And the opposite side of that, and I'm glad we're talking, number one. The opposite side of that is many families are saying, I understand it's your choice, but it's also my choice to try to stay healthy.
Absolutely.
And there are teachers who have reached out and said, what am I going to do with my classroom? And my initial reaction is PPE, and it's, the mask, the shield, maybe even coverings for your clothes, depending on what kind of, rubber gloves. And yeah, there are classes where children are not potty trained yet. There are classes that children will not be able to wear this. There are those exceptions. Part of me, I truly wish we could say, I want to mandate masks, but I also want to leave the discretion to the teachers and to the administration of each of those schools.
Here's the other.
And that's frustrating because
I hear you.
I want to start, like I said, want to start with some stringent behavior, but
Then loosen up.
as we go, you tend to loosen up. By the second or third week of school, yeah, you're joking around with the kids. You know which students can handle it, which students have to stay on task,
But how can you do that when you're mandating it? I don't know how you can.
and that's the frustration.
I don't know how you can relax it if it's mandated. And then the other thing that I think we need to consider are the children in our community who don't have access to a washer and dryer to wear a clean face mask to school every day. And I haven't seen one single study that talks about the potential harm of a dirty face mask, but I can imagine, like one of our parents just referenced the bullying that goes on. The face masks that the district is able to provide if children don't have them look like this. This is the one that I'm wearing. It's white. It's going to show everything. So I can only imagine a child sitting in class with a visibly dirty face mask over their face.
But what about paper face masks of this nature, like
What-
Ms. Bullock and Ms. Kirkus are wearing? And I'm assuming that we have face masks available at the schools for those children who aren't able to have face masks. And there will be times when it's like, I'm not speaking for other teachers. I'm only speaking for myself. But yeah, there may come a time where I have that little basket of all those dirty face masks, and I know who belongs to what because their little initials are written on them, and I take them home myself and wash them. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if we will get to that.
Do you see why, though, that's a problem? It's a problem that we don't know how to mandate it and how to implement it. I mean, I feel like if you're going to do something that is this strong, then we darn sure better have a good implementation plan for it. And how are we going to keep kids safe that this might be harmful for?
The other side, well, and taking that back to the mandate, the reason we put it in this particular plan as a mandate, as I recall, was, and this has been discussed, and I'm not certain if I discussed this with Mr. Bickner or Mr. Broski or whomever, but as we progress, as we progress with this reopening plan, and God help us, I certainly hope it doesn't last for a year. I mean, quite literally. But as we progress, as we see the need for some of those changes to be made, we're allowing those changes to be made, if that makes sense. And so, I can't answer your question. I understand. Trust me, I've been struggling with this as well.
I know we all have.
But
I see both sides of it. That's what I'm saying. There's science on both sides. There are valid concerns and questions on both sides.
Yes.
And that's why, to me, it's so difficult to say, no, you must. Regardless of your questions, regardless of your concerns, we don't have the answers, but you must wear it anyway. And I just have a really hard time with that.
Okay, Ms. Bullock, you want to?
Well, I just tell you, it's, up here, I mean, somebody sent a screenshot and so different people that without their mask, it is difficult. I can tell you it is. My glasses fog up. I walk into the restroom and I'm ready to take it off, but I could do it. If I needed to do it and if I thought it was a safety for other people, I would do it, even though I don't like to do it. I'd make myself do it, and if I had somebody sick at home, if I go into the store, wherever they say you're supposed to wear them, I would just, I do worry about, I like the term, face coverings rather than the mask, because I think I have visions, I think you said it, Ms. Gilhausen, where kid taking it off, they drop it in the restroom, it gets the
I can
pudding
tell
on.
you, we bought net gaiters for our kids. That's what
Yeah.
we have for school, that they can pull
Yeah,
down
you just
and
pull it
up
up and
stays
down.
around their
That
neck.
way they have it on their.
What did you
they-
call them?
It's called a gaiter. It's called a gaiter. I know you have a problem with gators, Miss Studdard. We're
That
big
was a-
gator
that
fans
was
at our
good.
house.
I like that.
One of those.
Yes,
Yes.
that's a gaiter.
Yeah, so you can pull it up
That's
and down,
called a
and it's not
gaiter?
being
It's called a
taken
gaiter.
off.
Does
and
it have
dropped.
anything to do
Because
with the
when I
University of Florida?
It's GAIT.
Oh, yeah,
T-O-R.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Now,
Thank you.
that's okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And I prefer those because, again, when I take mine off, it's in, where do I put it, I mean, okay, can I hang it here? Do I put it, my purse? What do I do with it? So I think that is a much better system for them, can pull it up and they can put it down, in my opinion. But again, not every child can afford those, or maybe their parents don't have those, so that's a concern. But again, it's like everything. We'd have to, I believe in personal responsibility. I think we have to train our children, whatever's good and whatever's right. And my goodness, let's hope this is a restart plan. It's not a forever plan. That is definitely, my hope and for everybody. But anyway, so that's kind of my 2 cents on that.
Okay. Ms. Karakis.
Would you mind if I waited? I'd like to hear your opinion too, and then share mine.
Oh, okay, I'd be glad to. I was sitting here thinking, Mr. Bickner, when we talked, you changed some language in this, didn't you, to face coverings instead of masks?
He did.
Okay,
No, ma'am, it always said face coverings. What I changed was the language at the very beginning, because when I spoke with Mr. Broski, he called me on Friday when I was out of town, and he said, it's harsh. It feels harsh at the beginning. And so I went back in and I thought about it.
where are you?
And I woke up Sunday morning and I changed the very beginning. So I said, the use of face coverings, while objectionable to some,
Wait a minute,
has been
where are you?
strongly recommended by the Department of Health
Page
as
6.
a primary means to prevent the spread of COVID-19. This mandate reflects that stance. However, there are exceptions to the requirement of using a face covering. It is important to look at the exceptions list before judging the mandate. The mandate is as follows. That softened it because when I went back and looked at that mandate list, and after I went back and re-listened to everything everybody said, that they didn't want to have a doctor's note, that they didn't want to have this and they didn't want to have that, I went back and re-tailored everything that I had thought about so that it met all of your objections. Okay, so then when I sent it out, the only objection that came back to me was from Mrs. Bola. And she said, what are you going to do about the situations where you have ESE students and self-contained classrooms where it's impractical to use a mask and impossible to safe distance? And so I wrote the note at the end because sometimes there's just not a good answer. And then I sent it out again. And to this day, no one has objected to anything other than what I've just laid out. And so I'm not real clear what it is that's wrong with the mask mandate that's been put in this reopening plan.
It's not the mandate. I mean, it's not the mandate. It's not the language that you've written. What I'm hearing Ms. Gilhausen say, and if I'm incorrect, please correct me. How do we make certain that this is upheld? Number one. How do we determine?
And as I explained, what I thought the last time was, from what I had gathered from speaking with other lawyers and a superintendent, was my principals know how to do that. Okay, and that's how it came back to me. And my teachers know how to do that. Ms. Bola, you were a teacher for I don't know how many years, a lot. You knew how, when something came down, you knew how to tell your students, this is what you've got to do. And if you don't do this, there are going to be repercussions for this, okay? And so how do you tell somebody to do that? Just exactly like that. Just what the principals say. An elementary school principal does not walk in and say, you know, I'm going to spank you and then I'm going to expel you. He has other ways of teaching. Mrs. Bullock, you were an elementary school principal. They have other ways of cajoling and convincing a student to do what needs to be done.
But I
Yeah.
guess, Mr. Bickner, the question is, what is an appropriate consequence for a child who refuses to wear a face mask? I mean, that's a valid question, and that is part of the implementation.
But it's not a legal question.
I'm
You know,
not-
what do I think is a
correct.
valid consequence? I'm not sure what a valid consequence is, but I think I could have convinced, I know that I can convince my 6-year-old granddaughter to wear a face mask because I've done it. And my 2-year-old daughter, if I could get one to fit. So,
My children wear a face mask when we go in stores, and anywhere they're
So-
required to wear them, we wear them.
Well,
All of us do.
so
I'm not
thousands
saying
of
that
them
kids
don't.
can't obey, but I'm saying there are those who don't. And that's just
So-
reality.
So, Ms. Gilhausen, if I could, the implementation of the plan is the role of the superintendent. So we would work in order to implement it with common sense and rational thought when it comes to this issue, no different than what we do with IDs and countless other things. People who forget their supplies, people, and the list of compliance kinds of things that a principal does on a daily basis, and all the teachers do on a daily basis, is limitless. This is just one more of those things. Will it require some training? Yeah, it will require some training, require some direction, but the implementation part of that is not directly stated in the policy, and that's something that I would do.
Okay, y'all want me to speak now? Normally, the chairman goes last, but if you want me to speak first, I'll be glad to. I have not really changed my mind since we talked about this in the past. We've received, what would you say, over 300 emails, some for, some against, everything from you're violating my constitutional rights to please let me as a kindergarten teacher, I teach these little kids to walk in line and do fire drills, and I can teach them how to do wear a mask or a gaiter. Boy, that hurts me to even say that. We're a 5-member board, and the majority rules on things, and I go along with it. One of the first things we learned when we go to conference is vote your conscience. You win some, you lose some. The majority rules, it stays in this room, and we go on and live our life. But I still stick to my guns. If I had my way, it would be K through 12 mandatory mask. I know it brought, when I went in a couple stores this morning, and little kids, little bitty kids have on masks. And I thought, they can't go in, you go to the grocery store now, you're in a mask. You go to the drugstore, you're in a mask. And I thought, you can't go out to the Navy base without a mask on. And I thought, where can you go now when you don't have a mask on? And, I agree with you. I do not like wearing these things. Do not like it at all. It, as you said, I've learned that my glasses don't fog up as bad as I pinch this together. So that helps. But you have to learn and adapt to it. It's not fun, and I don't want the kids to have a mask on for 7 hours a day. That's impossible. I would want them to have mask breaks, go outside, get some fresh air, whatever. I saw something the other day about, it was on some TV program, about, I was worried about band. How do you do the band and the chorus and so forth? But they were saying that with band, they even have masks now that have a little hole in it so they can still play their instrument. I don't know. There's all kinds of things coming up. Things are evolving day by day, different things to do. But I feel we have to make exceptions. The special ed kids, the ESC kids, without a doubt, there's some of them that you just cannot do it. And usually those are very, very small classes. I think that in a classroom, if the teacher can socially distance her kids, I don't think they would have to wear a mask if they can be socially distanced. But when they are in the hallway or in the lunchroom or, go into lunchroom or whatever, I think a lot of it, as Mr. Brodsky said, is we just got to use a little common sense about this. Of course, there's going to be exceptions. Of course, we don't want kids sitting there with a mask glued to their face for every minute of every day. If they get into a classroom, now the teachers, some of them said it's really going to be hard to socially distance, but with as many as we have now signed up for virtual, the class sizes may be smaller anyway. We don't know. We're counting numbers. Didn't you say like 23% are going virtual?
23%, 8,845.
8,845. And, that's a lot. That is a lot of students.
Well, even if the
My
class size.
daughter in Atlanta, their Cobb County schools are going virtual. My sister in Winston-Salem is a teacher. They're going virtual. What I would like to do is get this in place, but, maybe 9 weeks or the end of October, we could reevaluate and lighten up some, depending on how these numbers go. And I understand parents that don't want their kids to wear masks. I get it. But I have to also think about the entire student body. If I say, Mrs. Smith, your child doesn't have to wear a mask to his first, second, third grade class, that's fine with Miss Smith. She's happy as a lark. And little Johnny's happy. But the other kids in the classroom, we don't know if little Johnny is asymptomatic. He may be a carrier and not even know it. You've got a teacher in there who is trying to maintain social distance, teach with a mask on or a gaiter. But you have to think about all the other children that are in the classroom, that little Johnny not only is, he could affect the other kids in the classroom and the teacher. And it just doesn't seem to be the safest way to do things. Sometimes you just have to stand up and say, how I feel. Now, if the majority of the board still wants K through 2 to be, if they, strongly recommended, the board rules. But I myself think that everybody should wear a mask, and I think the little ones would get a kick out of it. I think because they want to be like their big sisters and their big brothers, and you see them walking around in the grocery store, and they're just almost strutting because they've got their mask on like their big brother and big sister and their mom or their dad have on. I think it's all in the way, and I think our teachers are so good that they could do it in a way. They may draw kitty cat whiskers on them. I don't know, but they've got all kind of inventive things that they can do, and I would like to think that maybe, depending on how these COVID numbers go that we see every day, at some point in the near future, let's reevaluate. We could lighten up a little bit. But right now, I don't want to know that there is a child or a teacher or a support personnel that has gotten sick because we didn't make so-and-so wear a mask. So, Ms. Garrick, it's your turn.
All right, thank you, and thank you for allowing me to go last. And I agree with what you said.
Dear God.
I know, right? I do think that it would be nice if we did after 30 days of review. I agree with the mask. I wear it everywhere, and I think the little ones would be able to wear them. I think a big part of it is how it's presented by their
Right,
parents. And if you're anxious, your child's going to be a little anxious. Mr. Bickner, I have a question. This reopening plan is only in place for 90 days, correct? What happens after the 90 days?
When you pass something as an emergency under 120.54, you have 90 days within which to go through the process to make it officially adopted according to the rules. And so it's in place from the time it's adopted. And if you don't do that within the 90 days, at the end of 90 days, it expires and goes away.
Okay. So after 90 days, we'd either have to readdress this.
Well, you're going to have to do more than that. You're going to have to, if you don't want it to expire at the end of 90 days, sometime around September the 6th, you're going to have to give a notice. You're going to have to bring it back before the board, and you're going to have to give a notice for a public hearing sometime in October the 6th, because it has to be done then before July, August, September, before October the 22nd. And so you have built-in time problems that you have to meet. That's the problem with trying to do it now as anything other than an emergency, is because you have those time problems. And it takes 28 days between the time that you advertise and the time you come to a public hearing, and it takes about 8 days between the time you say, let's have a public hearing, and the time you can actually get it in the paper.
Thank you. So, and here I am beating a dead horse, I guess, but I still, I have an issue with the temperature checks. And I agree with the masks. I'm fine with all of that. But I got to thinking after our last meeting when I went home, and I was thinking about everything that was said. And Mr. Bickner said, in order to not be liable if we were to be sued, we need to do everything within our power to ensure the safety, health, and well-being of our students and staff. Yeah. And I can't understand how we could be doing everything possible without doing temperature checks before students enter their classroom, enter school, however, but I feel so strongly about it that I can't support the reopening plan without adding that to it. So if anybody would like to add temperature checks, I would be in favor of it.
May I ask, I'm not certain which one of you might have clarification on this, but as I recall, you had said something to the effect of, as prescribed, to the betterment of the health and whatever, as prescribed by the Department of Health, if I'm not mistaken.
Let's address
When we were addressing
the temperature checks
last time,
Okay.
and the Department of Health, if I'm not mistaken, came through with.
The Department of Health said that they weren't diagnostic, that
Right,
the problems that you have,
That's, I
number
think,
one
what-
is
yeah.
that you don't know how to interpret them. And I think when I sent something to Ms. Bullock today, or yesterday it may have been, the question was, a teacher wanted to know, can I take it upon myself to test every child that comes into my classroom with a non-touch thermometer? And my response is no, and I listed 7 things, and I've thought about 7 more since I sent that as to why it would violate, number 1, the law, and number 2, board policy and state rule.
Can you give
but
us some ideas of why it would violate?
In that particular instance, you have one teacher who wants to choose to have children come in her classroom, undergo a temperature check. She doesn't have the authority from the state board. She doesn't have the authority from the school board. She doesn't have the authority from the parent. She has just unilaterally decided that there is an additional requirement to come to her class that is not imposed upon either the rest of her school or the rest of the district. Next, she doesn't know how to interpret those. If you come in and you have a 97.3, or you have a 102.2, or a 101.7, how do you distinguish? What do you decide to do with that? Next, you've got a child standing there in a line and you go, you're good, you're good, you're good, you're good. Oh, you got to go to the nurse's station. Well, you've just done a diagnosis of a temperature check in front of all the other students in violation, in my opinion, of HIPAA. And now you're sending them off to the nurse with a diagnosis that there may be something wrong. And I can promise you that before the day goes out, every kid's going to tell their parents, and their parents are going to be buzzing on the telephone, and you're going to have a problem with that. There are other things that she could do if she's concerned, the teacher, like wear a mask, keep sanitizer available, keep her classroom cleaner, and have Clorox wipes and all the other wipes, and do all of the things. There are about 8 things that the CDC and the health department say you can do, masks being one, and temperatures being way down on the list. And so in that instance, when I put that out, and you have to understand, I don't work in a vacuum. I'm one guy. And so I put things out, and the response that I get from people that I've known for 20 years that do this same work came back, and they were like, you shouldn't even have to ask that question. There's so many problems with that, I don't know where to start. And so what I did was I sent out my laundry list of my things that I saw wrong with it, and everyone came back and said, we agree with your analysis of that. Now, that's one teacher in one school. Now, Brevard County voted as a board to say, against the advice of their attorney, to say that if a teacher chose to do that in their classroom, that they would support that and it was okay. Now, I think that's a mistake, and I think it's a mistake for all of the reasons that I just outlined. One more is that you've just created a record that is either a student record or a medical record, because it's got to be one or the other. And now you've got to keep that forever. And you've got to keep that hidden forever. And so what do you do with that record? You've got it for every child in your class. Do you see what I'm saying? And so for an individual teacher, I think it's a problem. What the Department of Health lady said was, number one, it's not diagnostic. And number two, there are too many things that affect it. If you take a Tylenol before you come to school, you don't have a temperature more than likely, but 4 hours later you may. And so, and even if you have a temperature, what does it signify? Does it signify you have a COVID-19 infection, or does it signify you got a cold? Or does it signify you just run hot? You know, I don't know what it means. So all of those things made temperatures not high on the list of things to do or things to watch out for. And my understanding from Mr. Brodsky was that he was trying to follow very strictly those things that the Department of Health used to diagnostic because, or preventative, or things you could do, because in the executive order, they are listed as our go-to people. And that's dead. That's who he's using, and that's why. So that's a long answer to what should have been a very short
That was a long
question.
answer. You're right.
Pardon me?
I agree, though, about the individual teacher. You know, I do think that we should just have it for everybody, for every
Well,
teacher to be
and-
able to
and if
have
you're
it.
gonna do it,
Not
do it
just
for
the one,
everyone,
but for
yeah.
everyone. And I know Mr. Brodsky said, well, it would create a bottleneck and it would slow down the process of getting kids in school. And Mrs. Bowler, you actually said, if they come to school with the fever, well, they've already exposed people before. And so, you know, and my thought is, well, we would be preventing them from exposing anybody else. And they can go to the clinic. The clinic is who could keep the record of the temperature. Anybody who's sent down, they then keep track of it, just like in a normal day if somebody's sent to the clinic.
Ms.
The nurse is
Karkas,
keeping.
the nurse is going to interrupt and tell you that I'm not signing my name to somebody else's temperature check.
Right, well, you can check it yourself when the kid comes to the clinic, and then you can write down what the temperature was, and that's how it should be done. And I just, I feel like we're not doing everything we should to ensure the safety of our students. And in my eyes, if it takes a little longer and there's a little bit of a bottleneck, it doesn't matter. If we have kids coming to school with the temperature or employees, because it should be employees also. I mean, you go to the doctor's office, you go to the hospital. My husband and I went out to dinner the other night. We got out of the car and walked up to the reception, and they did a temperature check on us. So it's that easy and that quick. It didn't hold us up. It didn't take 15 minutes.
Was it a restaurant?
Yeah, a caps on the water. It was
Did they
all but,
violate your HIPAA laws?
right? It was all but 3 seconds. That's how long it took.
So really, the recommendation had nothing to do with the bottleneck. It's the health department made the determination that over a third of people are asymptomatic. They wouldn't even have a temperature that would potentially have the disease. The second part of that was she felt like it would require the person to keep the medical record. In other words, a person that takes it should, in her determination, keep the medical record. Then the issue of medical records had come up. It had nothing to do with the bottleneck. The other issue would be when you have the bus situation and you're picking a child up, and if you even attempted to do the scan there, if the child had a fever, you can't reject the student, because then it's an unsafe situation for the student to go
Right.
home. So I think
bring the student to school, alert the parents that student
right.
had a temperature, and if possibly, and then you isolate the child when you get them to
Yeah.
school.
I
I
think-
would never, ever suggest we leave a child on the side of the road. We would
Right.
never do that.
I think that the recommendations of the health department are really what we had based the decision on, that would be more appropriate to not do the screening. I know some people had said, bring him into the teachers. Well, I think the teachers would object to actually doing the temperature checks. And then they've already entered the building on top of that. So with all of that being the background in which that choice was made, that's the reason why the committee came up with that choice.
Well, I kind of feel like we're not doing everything we could. And I have some other questions here. I guess it was our last meeting, somebody came up and asked, what were we going to do about the attendance policy? And I know that there's COVID days, there's 80 hours for employees, but what about students? How many days per year are they permitted? We got it in an email also, and I think we need to address that for that parent. You know, what are we going to do about attendance for the students?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to look at the attendance policy, be more lenient about attendance, especially since we're going to require students to be out of school. You can't penalize them. The good news is that teachers are very accustomed to, very used to providing assignments for students that are out. And so I think the gap there can be made whole in that because of the situation, we're going to have to be more lenient. And, it concerns me that people would send their kid to school if the kid is sick. So if you keep a strict attendance policy with not allowing some wiggle room there, then it kind of sends the wrong message, which is you should be keeping your kid home if the child's sick.
What about the ACE students? We've gotten some emails about ACE students that the only option for them is brick and mortar.
So we've talked to the A student. In fact, Mr. Daly's probably talked to about 60 of them personally, being NIB, and looking for alternatives for them for rigorous curriculum. AP by College Board has an online program that's already been developed. And so we would have to substitute some classes there in order to keep a rigorous curriculum for those students and to keep them going. ACE simply does not have, or IB do not have online in that format.
Right. And I guess my last comment, and Mr. Bickner, the Appendix A, I like the changes in what you made to it. I did have a parent that has an ASD child who was very concerned about them being forced to keep it on, and so I'm glad there are exceptions to that.
Absolutely.
But one of you ladies said it about mask breaks. Now, is that, right now, there's nothing in the plan, so is it going to be in writing that there will be a mask break, how it will be implemented, how often throughout the day?
I think the implementation phase is really the role of the superintendent. So we would have an implementation plan. We would have to train administrators on that. They would have to then talk to teachers. I think this is a situation no different than dress code, no different than lanyards, no different than many of the things that teachers are already accustomed to. And I think it's a good opportunity for administrators to coach when somebody goes too far one way or too far the other way. One of the beauties of what we do is we're in the very much the human business. And then one of the issues with being in our business is that we're very much in the human business. And so it's going to require that give and take and the adjustment of it. I can tell you this, I've always considered myself to be rational and use common sense, and that would be the order of the day when it comes to implementation of any such policy.
And what will we do about, well, I know we're hoping that fewer students will come back, and so that class size won't be an issue. But I was briefly asking about the teachers that are going to do the One Clay online. Ms. Troutman explained that they would still be in their classroom. And I'm wondering, would we need to use those classrooms for spreading the students out more so that they could be fewer in each class and not have to wear a mask all day?
So, yeah, I agree with you. So right now, there's 8,845 students involved in this. The trend across our neighboring districts is for that to go up. So I would anticipate there'd be more than that in the end. So the challenge there is when you're talking about, almost 9,000 students, a quarter of your population, that's the equivalent of opening up 8 elementary schools on the same day or 4 large high schools on the same day. It's a huge logistical challenge. We've met with our partners in collaboration with our teachers on the issue and how best to make that happen. We'll continue to have that collaboration along the way. I will say this, I've looked at some of the plans, individual plans of schools, and there is some really good stuff happening out there and people with very thoughtful plans for how to implement this on a daily basis at the school level. Everything from cafeteria spacing and how that looks to social distancing within the classroom. I think that our administration and the teams of teachers that have gotten together are going to implement the very best plan that they can, related to this. We don't, I think that it's fair to say, I think one of you said this already, it's not a perfect situation. And it might have been Ms. Bullock that was talking about that. And I just think that it's going to require cooperation of extreme levels by everyone. That means administration taking a different view and taking on roles that they never had to take on before, whether it's custodial roles, et cetera. I think it's going to have to take, extreme understanding by teachers, especially when it comes to the scheduling involved in this. This is a very unusual situation. It's an extraordinary time, and it's going to take extraordinary patience and cooperation of everyone to make this the very best that it could be.
One other question for you. How do you see, and Mrs. Bowler, you already asked this, how do you see us enforcing it? Was it written in the plan? I didn't see it if it was, where, a warning, a letter home, a phone call to mom? What will be the process of?
Typically, the
trying
first step is to
convince everyone
coach.
to keep it on.
Is to coach a young person. 9 times out of 10, simply coaching them gets them in the right direction. Whether it's a student that's running across the campus and they shouldn't be running, or there's countless times that teachers, administrators have to coach, and that's the first. We're not interested in punishing people unduly. That's not the purpose.
Right.
The purpose is a correction and enforcement of the rule that's reasonable and rational and treats everyone with respect. And that's the hope for implementing something like this.
And then when somebody in the district or even a teacher or someone at school, if they should come down with it, and I know what we saw last week, the health department will be the person who notifies, and I'm unsure of how we're going to do the the contact tracking or tracing, whatever the correct term was. But are we doing that? You know, like someone from each school will keep track of it, and how will we notify people? And,
So
you know,
the health department would actually do the contact tracing because we don't have a right to that medical information to begin with. So the administration at the school, their direct contact is Terry Dennis. Terry Dennis's direct contact is Heather Huffman.
okay.
So I think that it's important to note that there has to be a clear chain of command in order to keep communication the way that it should, because we're talking about private medical
Well,
information.
and I understand that. What about if it's a specific department down at the district office, and without saying someone's name, can you say somebody in such and such building has come down with the virus, to let them know? No. That they may have come in contact, the other employees?
That would be the role of contact tracing. There are specific questions, and there's
Okay.
a protocol that they follow when they do contact tracing. And based on the information that they get, they make the determination as to whether that individual needs to self-quarantine or not,
Okay.
based on the information that they receive.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Stoddard.
I do have one question. Under our health rooms, on this document on page, let me see, page 9.
Page 9.
The last bullet under health rooms says updated sick and wellness policies, no longer 24 hours symptom and medication free for returning to school, but 72 hours symptom and medication free. I saw an update from the CDC today, and I'm not sure when it was released, but now they're saying it's 24 hours fever and symptom free. So I don't know if that's something you guys want to revisit or not. And I know, like you said, this is probably going to be an evolving document as the CDC changes their recommendations. We'll have to revisit it, but it's something to consider.
Yes, ma'am. I think a couple times in the document that we would have to revise it if new guidance comes out.
Right.
I just want to say one thing. I was sitting here thinking about a classroom, and, you know, we've gotten several emails from people who have a child who was health compromised, and what was going to happen, you know, that child couldn't wear a mask. And, you know, those kind of things are things that you just kind of think through as you go. And, you know, all the other kids in the classroom would have masks on, but because he or she's not able to wear a mask. But that's something where I feel like the teacher can arrange that so that that student is as safe as possible, and the other students are safe. But I think, you know, there's no answer for every question that we've gotten in the 300 emails. I was just sitting here trying to think of all the questions that we were asked because I wanted to try to get them answered. But there's just so many questions, and it's uncharted waters. We're going to have to be compassionate, use common sense. The teachers, when we had to close down, boy, did they step up and just did a fantastic job. And I know, and as you said, a lot of the schools have got so many ideas and plans that probably things that we haven't even thought of, and they'll come up with it, and then maybe other schools will kind of borrow those ideas. But we're going to see a lot of different things. But as long as, I think at some point, as we watch these COVID numbers, I think at some point we can reevaluate. And as I think you said, Ms. Bola, I want to call you Bush for some reason.
Start with a B, yeah.
I knew it was a B. Okay, but I would like to be able to reevaluate so that, you know, we can lessen it as those numbers level off or start going down.
Is it possible to do that at October 1's meeting?
Well,
that would be 5 weeks after school starts.
I don't know
or
if that's,
5 weeks
it
and a few
depends on how the
days.
numbers are going.
Who knows?
Yeah.
We don't know.
We've gotten emails that said, you know, you were out of school March 13th. You should
Right.
know now. You should have
Right.
known then what we were doing now.
Oh.
And I thought, whoa,
Whoa.
you know, nobody knew what we were doing at that stage, aside from we're going on spring break. We're going to take a week off after that. Or it was the week off and then spring break, whichever. And hopefully we'll be coming back to school April 1st, or hopefully we'll be coming. And this has just been continuing and continuing. And I was thinking as Mr. Brodsky was talking about the implementation of the mandate. Each school, and truly in the graduations, each school was different. Even though everybody only got 2 tickets, even though everybody was spaced, the principals had come together with the county team to say, let's do this graduation. Let's see what the best way we can do this. Let's all agree, and they collaborated. And one of the things that we always teach in our classrooms is collaboration, and we do it in pre-planning. We do it with other teachers. We do it with our administrations. And I know that there were pictures of people not wearing masks, and I had my Oak Leaf mask on earlier. I mean, I was at Oak Leaf High, and boy, oh boy, I think I can count on one hand the number of students who did not have a mask on when they crossed that stage. They were just, everybody was masked, even for the pictures, it was, nope, we're gonna leave our masks on and do this right. In that pre-planning, when you start talking about, okay, we've got new procedures we have to enact, the ideas that are generated in those meetings and the ideas that you get from other teachers and from, I mean, the administrators seek that out as well. I'm certain when the bus drivers get together, they're probably going to have different ideas as to what they can do and how they can do things. And even though, you know, the mandate says you must, there are going to be students in the classroom who come in and say, my mom and dad said I am not wearing a mask, whatever. You have that on day-to-day things in your classroom all the time. And it may not be mom and dad, it may just be a bad day for that child, or it may just be whatever, but you work with it, and you work with that child, and you do it in such a way that they're not going to feel left out. If, let's say, they do have a compromise that reflects on their mask wearing, they're not going to be left out. They're not going to be bullied because they're not wearing a mask.
But they are going to be isolated more so than other children will.
Perhaps. But here again, it depends on, you know, it depends on how you've got your classroom arranged, how that child might be able to do social distancing. And I don't even like the word social distancing, just the distancing, because you don't want anyone to social distance. These kids are clamoring to get back to their friends. They are, I mean, they want to get back to that norm. They realize that this business is not normal. They realize that this business is something we have to put up with in Publix now, and we have to do it in Walmart, and we have to do it in Target, and we have to do it in Home Depot or wherever else you go. But they also realize that, okay, only for now. You know, it's only for now right now. So let's do this, let's get through it, and let's hope that we can take these off. And when they do start taking them off, they're gonna be like, whoa, this is different, you know, this is cool. But it's something that we're all going to have to collaborate and try to do it the best way that we can.
Mr. Brodsky, I'm still wondering about the mask breaks. What will we put, is there anything that's going to be put in place to allow these kids throughout the day? If you have a classroom where they're not socially distanced and they're sitting 2 feet away, and all day long they're sitting with the mask on.
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
could
we've been sitting
certainly-
here since 3 o'clock. We were all tired of it.
We could certainly make the
I'm ready to
adults
pull mine
aware.
off.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
I said, we could certainly make the adults, meaning the teachers, aware and cognizant so that they can work that into their routine.
They will.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering, does it need to be in the plan? Does it need to be anything formal
No,
that says
I'll take care of the
so many
implementation.
times
This is the
throughout the day there'll be a
implementation.
break?
Yeah. well,
Okay.
This comes under him.
And teachers will do that automatically.
They
And plus
will.
I
adult,
hope so.
I mean, high school students, when they go into a they'll find a way to to take a breath between, trust me, and then probably doing something else they shouldn't be doing, but that's okay. But the bottom line is that, you know, teachers will build that in, you know.
Okay. Is there any more discussion? Well, okay. I had a motion by Mrs. Bola, a second by Ms. Gilhousen, and would you repeat your motion? Did you want this?
No, it's on the
Okay.
screen. Motion to approve the emergency adoption and implementation of the 2020-21 Clay County Schools reopening plan incorporating changes that we have directed Mr. Bickner and the superintendent to make. I
Did we make changes?
was just going to say, I don't believe we've made any changes.
Didn't.
We can if you want to add temperature checks.
No, thank you.
If you want to add, it has what on the mask?
We have K through 2 strongly recommend. We have 3 through 12 mandated.
Y'all want to talk about changing K through 2? Is anybody interested? You're not, and you're not, Ms. Carrickett, or
I would be fine with it, but I'm voting against it because of the temperature checks. I'm not supporting this plan.
you'll throw the whole plan out because of temperature
I
check?
don't believe we're really.
And I know, Ms. Gilhousen, you're not going to do it. So,
So, Ms. Bullock, how do you feel about K through 2?
I think, I mean, I'd like to leave them out. I think we need to, you know, again, if it looks like there's a problem, that especially those are smaller class sizes. And again, if we have students that are not going to those schools, then empty classrooms, they could put all the extraneous type of file cabinets and things like that, and they could social distance in their rooms. And I just think it's better. I think at that time where kids are learning their sounds, teachers are speaking to them, it's important that they see the teachers speaking, and it's important that the teacher sees them speaking. So that's my opinion of that.
okay,
And-
so the motion is the K through 2 strongly recommended, 3 through 12 would be mandated. Okay, that's the motion, right?
The motion is the plan.
As it's,
As it
As it
stands
stands.
right now. Is that correct?
okay,
The motion is to accept the plan with no
That's no
no
changes.
amendments.
Right.
Well, no, that's not the motion you read,
Oh.
though.
It said incorporating changes that we have directed. However, we haven't directed any changes to
Right.
either
well,
one of them.
so,
You can't change your motion. That's what you said, so just vote on it.
Right, right.
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 well, do you want to withdraw that motion and go back? Let's see. To the one that just says,
There-
the school reopening plan is written. You know, the first motion, the number 2, the first motion. Because if we didn't make any changes on it,
So if I take away the motion that I
you can
made,
rescind your
rescind
motion.
my
Ms. Bullock, or,
do I need to do that, Mr. Bickner?
I don't think you need to do it because there are no changes that have been
Changes.
directed. So when you say
okay, got it.
do it as directed, and there are
wasn't
no
directed, so-
changes, then it stands as it is.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to leave it like it is then.
Got it.
Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say no.
No.
Motion carries 3-2 with Ms. Carrickus and Ms. Gilhousen dissenting. Okay. Okay. Next, number 13, revision to the 2020-2021 calendars, student calendar, employee work calendar, and payroll calendars. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move approval, but I do want to discuss it.
Okay.
Second?
I have a motion by Ms. Gilhousen, a second by Ms. Bola. Okay, discussion, Ms. Gilhousen?
I've had several people express a concern about taking days away from Christmas break, and I just wondered if we could address that.
Well, Ms. Dennis, do you want to tackle that one? She said she'd had some concerns with people that
Yes.
were taking away a couple days at Christmas.
Am I on?
And to be more specific, the understanding that I think is prominent is that the governor waived the 180-day requirement, so they're not fully understanding why we're having to
Yes.
try to make up the full 180.
Let's
Let's
let
get
Ms.
that.
Dennis,
I'm like Bonnie. So, yes, and then I did meet with Mr. Bickner about this as well, and I did consult with Mr. Oliva that, yes, the governor waived the 180 days requirement, but there is still a 900-hour requirement, and specifically for high school students or our junior high students that are in accelerated courses, in order for them to earn a high school credit, they have to have an equivalency of 135 hours. And it actually breaks down to minutes by semester to earn that, which is 4,050 minutes needed per semester. So you have to have that in the first semester. So when pushing the calendar back 2 weeks, it inadvertently then pushes us into January to ending the second week. And we then had to make sure we padded the minutes in the first semester. So we actually padded it to 4,500 minutes instead of the 4,050 because of hurricane season. So we still would be able to have 910 hours on our high school calendar, 930 hours on both our middle school or junior high and elementary configurations. So the topic of discussion with the calendar committee was, when we have 2 days that we need to fill, do we want to take 2 days from the Monday, Tuesday of Thanksgiving break or the Monday, Tuesday of a winter break? So the committee had also expressed that there was the typical, we like the full week at Thanksgiving as well. So that was part of that discussion.
Did we consider taking it from spring break at all?
We did,
Since
but then
we
you
had
don't
a
miss the
really
first
long
semester.
spring break this year. Since we had a really long spring break this year.
I'm just thinking.
We're
people,
still on it.
People make plans. I mean, it's really cutting it close to Christmas with the 23rd being the.
It is, and I know we had discussed it, like if Christmas sometimes fell on a Monday, the 25th, you would typically then go up to like that Thursday as well the week prior. The reason why it couldn't be taken away from the back half is because the minutes had to be padded for the first semester.
Okay.
So, because we have some semester-based courses at the high school level.
And did you add minutes to each day? Is that how you did it?
No, we didn't have to. We actually were able to take from our early releases. So from the high school, they would typically have every Wednesday a PLC that got out 20 minutes early every single Wednesday. So they moved from every Wednesday to just once a month. I can openly tell you we have not sat down to decide which Wednesday that month would be. And a lot of that is I got to speak with Daryl for transportation.
Right.
We then were able to take it from looking at typically you would have 6 early release days, which cuts our minutes down from 322 days at an elementary school to 195. So we're able to get time back by going from 6 early release days to 4. And then at the high school level, we had to cut further. So their 6 went to 2. So there is a discrepancy there. The other concern that we are still working with right now would be just making sure Bennett has the appropriate minutes. So if a school needed to have minutes added, it would only be Charles E. Bennett, because we asked about the waiver for the lowest 300, and they told us with Just Read Florida, we're still working with that we will not be waived for that mandate.
Okay.
We did have to look at, also when you push the school year back 2 weeks, and like you said, Ms. Gelhausen, the waive, so where you're going from 180 student days to 175 days without going like halfway back into June.
Yeah.
Like this is not like taking teachers or students into like June 15th and 16th. And I know I even got an email from a teacher that said she had planned like a cruise already, like
I got that email.
June 2nd. And I was just like, oh my, like,
Yeah.
I know they're having really good deals right now, but so it was, how can we not push back so far into the
Oh, no,
summer?
I don't want to interrupt summer. That was
Where
never my
then
intention.
again, it's like, would we push back the following as a domino effect to the following calendar? So in order to kind of work around that as well, and I know Ms. Studdard's on the committee as well, one of the days that we had to take in the second semester was Fair Day. And it literally came down to when you look at who's paid on the 11-month and who's paid on a 12-month and what counts as a holiday for them or not, I couldn't take Good Friday. And the other option was then President's Day, which is a federal
and that's a
holiday.
federal
Right.
holiday.
So
But didn't Fair Day, can't they take that on Good Friday, which is already a holiday?
The fair will be open on Good Friday.
So they,
There you go.
so
Yes.
we thought
Right.
that worked out. And what I liked, oh goodness, who turned the lights out?
All right, we're done,
No,
let's go.
I-
Little
Now
more.
we know. The one thing that I liked about it is I've been seeing some calendars like from surrounding county, and our students will still get out June the 3rd.
Yes.
And I noticed next door, they don't get out till June the 15th or something.
No, I thought that was wonderful, and I commend the work that you guys did on such quick notice. I think
Hey,
it was a big
if-
undertaking, and
It was a tough calendar meeting
I'm
because,
sure.
you know, Fair Day is tough. You
Mhm.
don't want to fool with that,
I
but
hear you.
we,
You don't
and
mess with
then
Fair Day.
between Thanksgiving and Christmas,
Mm-hmm.
I think part of the rationale was that after Christmas, they have a long
Right.
time.
Well, and I
So-
think the other thing that's important to point out is that we're not delaying school based on COVID numbers. We're not delaying school based on anything other than the fact that, like Mr. Broski said, we're setting up 8 elementary schools and
Right.
staffing them and training those teachers up to be ready virtually to teach when they have not done that full time
Yeah.
before. So
And it's
a-
not even just the teachers. I mean, we're
Right.
talking bus drivers.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
everybody.
There's a lot to
It's
configure.
got to be
So,
trained.
Right.
This is new,
right.
and we're going to get through it, and
So
we'll do a good job of it.
It's a
but-
2-week delay for better customer service
Right.
at the end
That's
of it.
right.
That's a good way to
That's
put it,
right.
Ms. Gilhousen. Okay, I
Wait,
have a motion by Ms.
Wait, one more question, not
All
done.
right.
And then you all might have gotten the same phone call, I don't know. A 9-month employee
Yeah.
feels as if she's getting a pay cut. So does the payroll calendar for 9-month employees affect their salary?
They're getting paid the same number of days that they got paid last year at the end of August. They're getting paid the same number of days that they got paid last year.
Terry's thinking.
Well, and then so that was one of our biggest concerns,
Yeah.
honestly, when we met
didn't
as the
want that
calendar
to
committee
interfere with
was
9 months. No way.
I agree.
yes. So, and then just some history as that as well. So it takes 6 days to certify payroll. So we had, let me look at a calendar of a drop dead date for payroll that it had to go through was the 26th. So in order to do that, we had to ensure all employees were back working by the 17th.
Mhm.
It also was important to note that all of our new employees needed to be back working by the 19th in order for their insurance to pick up and start October 1. So they didn't have a gap in their health insurance to November 1st. So that's why you're going to notice on like transportation, it looks a little wonky. They come back for the 17th and 18th, and then they're off the 19th, and then would come back the 20th and 21st because we had to work a little creatively. To my understanding with the payroll calendars, that it mirrors what would be very similar to what they have had in years past. There are some instances, I believe, and Dr. Legutko can confirm, where there would be sometimes they would have 2 days on that one or 3 days on that paycheck. But everybody will still get a paycheck on 8/31.
Right, but is it the same number of days as Mrs. Studdard? You just said
That's
it's the
what I
same
was
number of
told.
days.
Yes, to my understanding, that's what I was told as well.
That's what I
Okay.
was told.
All right, so,
Because, the one thing that we did not want to happen,
Right.
and this was talked about in the
we all
calendar
talked
committee,
about it.
we did not want to penalize the 9-month
Right.
employees, because 10 and 11
or their
11
insurance.
months were
Yeah.
okay. But the 9 months, they really researched this deeply,
Good.
trust me.
I'm glad, because I know last month when this came up, that's what this
Yeah.
board had said.
Oh,
We
we
don't
were
want to
just-
financially hurt anybody.
True.
And guys did a very good job. Thank
Ah.
you. Thank you very much.
Do you have anything to add,
That's all I
Dr.
had.
Legutko?
No, I just wanted to reconfirm, the 9-month employees, their first paycheck will be August 31st, and it will be the number of days that were paid similar to last year, and I believe 3 years ago, the same number of days. So it's working with the calendar. It was a diligent activity, working, trying to ensure that the payroll calendars will align so that our employees will get paid as they normally would have had we not extend the start date. So
And y'all did a great job. I mean, they really had to go back and dig and figure it out, but it worked. Okay. All right. Now, are y'all ready for the vote? I have a motion by Ms. Gilhouse and a second by Ms. Bola. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0. Yay. Okay, it's got presentation from the audience, public comments, but we've already had public comments. Superintendent comments.
Just wanted to thank everybody for their collaboration here today. Very important that we got a plan into the state, and we
Right.
did have a deadline to do that. And so, thank you so much. And then for parents and students, we ask for a little bit of patience. We'll get you your schedules, but it'll be closer towards the opening date as we get further into August.
Well, at least they know the dates that school's going to start and the holidays, and they can plan cruises next summer. Hopefully, there won't be any more COVID by then. So we're making progress, and we've got the plan in place. So this has been a good meeting, and I just knew we were going to be here till midnight, but hey, we did well.
We were getting out early.
Okay, Mr. Bickner, did you have any other comments? Okay, school board comments?
I have nothing to say except hang in there, everybody. We're going to get all the schedules out. We'll do what we can and support Mr. Broski. Thank you for all the work that you did. Appreciate it.
Ms. Bullock?
Yeah, Mr. Broski, you were going to check on about food services for kids who are doing one clay, because I had several parents ask if they could come up to the school and get like a lunch and a breakfast similar to, anyway, so that's a question there. Just that I'm going to make a public service announcement. I got an email from Walgreens. Their manager in Keystone is on our community partnership board, and she said that this Saturday they're giving 20% off to all educators if they just bring their ID. So
To
whatever
the
you get-
Walgreens in Keystone?
all over.
All
I asked
over
if it was
Clay
everywhere.
County? Oh, wonderful.
So-
20% Saturday.
Go shopping.
Hey, that's an infomercial.
Yeah.
Our Ms. Caracas?
I really don't have anything other than Mrs. Bullock just made me think of, you had requested earlier that we get a list of which schools the kids go in virtual or one clay.
Yes.
And also,
You
Dr.
did it
Leggett,
all.
I don't forget about the list of expenditures from that CARES Act money. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Gilhousen.
I've had a couple questions about when the schools would have their numbers as far as how many students each school is expecting to return to brick and mortar, because I know as teachers are setting up their classrooms, they need to know how many students to expect, and I know a lot of them had done some of that, like over the spring break time period. They went ahead when they were out. Administration a lot of times went through and tried to kind of assign classes for the following year, but now things have really kind of gone
Yeah.
topsy-turvy. So
Right. We can get those to you as soon as we can. You got to realize now you're taking students out of that classroom, putting them into a online environment
right.
to the tune of about 9,000 of them.
Right.
So
No, I understand
as soon
it's
as
a
we get to
large
that
number.
point, we can
Yeah.
get you those numbers.
So there's not a time frame that we're looking at that we could expect to see how many
We could-
students will be at each school?
We can definitely give you that number within a couple days.
Okay.
But as far as what student is in what class with what teacher,
Just
that'll-
the big number for the school would be fine, right?
okay, we can do that.
Okay, is that it? And
One
Ms.
more
Bola?
announcement, I'm sorry. The Chamber of Commerce is pairing up with the foundation to hand out school supplies to teachers as well. So watch Facebook, look on Clay Foundation, because I believe
we've
the
got the
date's
date.
August 3rd, but I can't remember.
I've got it.
August 3rd, and it's a drive-through at the Orange Park Mall.
Okay, my turn. Okay, I've got 8:15. Y'all, we did good. We talked through this. We got the job done, and I think we did a good job. So, and Mr. Broski, thank you, and Mr. Bickner, Ms. Dennis. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting.